What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a brand new year, 2023. We're out here for the UFC, breaking down UFC Vegas 67. We're back at the Apex. We were supposed to have our boy Kelvin Gastelum, but he's got a staph infection. If you ask Conor McGregor, he lost a tooth. If you ask some people on Twitter, who knows exactly why Kelvin Gastelum's out of this fight, but his mouth is in all sorts of trouble. So in walks Sean Strickland. He ends the year and he starts the year for the UFC once again. Not exactly how we drew it up, but either way, that's the main event that we've got. Nassourdine Imavov had flown all the way here from France, so they were not going to turn him away and tell him, we don't have something for you. They got the guy who's always in a fight every week in Vegas, and that's Sean Strickland. So this should be a fun matchup. It should be an interesting card to break down. And we got none other than the king of the split decision himself, Timothy Troiano, here to do it with us. Tim, how are you, my brother? How was your break from fighting? It's been quite some time. It feels good to get back in the chair, wouldn't you say?
Oh, so excited for this. It's been a good break, but definitely needed a little bit of time to recoup and get ready for this year. But I'm very excited for this year and excited for this card.
Yeah, man. I don't think people really understand if they're not huge.
You kind of froze, buddy. Are you there?
Man, we did all the checks on the internet as well and having no problems, but seems when I'm in the host chair, got a little bit worse off. So hopefully we can hold it together here. But either way, we push forward. Oh, you know what it was, Tim? I had the link open when I clicked over to copy the link to put it on Twitter. So folks, you're seeing some behind the scenes shenanigans here, but I accidentally had the link open playing at the same time that I'm hosting it. So I'm sure that was not good for our connection, but either way, we roll on and we do have a good card to break down here. It's not the greatest card in the world on paper, but I do think that there's still some fun to be had. I'm glad to be back. So it should be a great night of fights to break down. What do you think about starting with the first fight of the night? We got a women's fight here between Priscilla Cachoeira and Sijara Eubanks. And I'll tell you the truth, Tim, this is not the kind of fight that I want to be betting a lot of money on. In the new year, I want to try and avoid some of these more volatile, women's MMA fights, especially in this case where Sijara Eubanks just has been proven to not be profitable as a favorite so far in the UFC. So maybe she turns that around here. She does have a favorable stylistic matchup in the sense that Priscilla Cachoeira has been taken down in the past. That's where she's been exploited. She's been finished on the ground by the likes of Valentina Shevchenko and others. But when you look at some of those fights, it took a little bit of time, a little bit of, damage. She's a pretty tough girl. She's willing to stick through some stuff. So I think it's very possible that Sijara Eubanks, the more skilled operator in the jiu-jitsu, certainly on paper and also based on what we've seen in the tape, is, somebody who's definitely live to win the first round and could potentially get that first round finish, whether it's with the damaging ground and pound. She really messed up her last opponent's eye when she was doing that ground and pound from the top mount when she was able to get that position. And then on the other hand, we've seen Sijara Eubanks start to fold up shop a little bit in the later rounds, start to give up positions, start to get hurt by shots that maybe she could have taken when she was fresh. So I think that that's a real concern when you're looking at a big price tag here. And right now I'm looking over on bestfightodds.com. I'm seeing minus 240 at Caesars Sportsbook and DraftKings, best available price in the market on Sijara Eubanks. And you're looking at a comeback of plus 210 in some places, including Bet Online, one of the sharpest markets out there for Priscilla Cachoeira on the money line. And you'd have to think a lot of people who are betting on Priscilla Cachoeira in this spot would be looking to back her by knockout, because she's been insanely profitable by women's MMA standards on that prop market. And, meanwhile, on the other side, Sijara Eubanks, she is obviously a dangerous woman when she's in that top position, violent with the ground and pound, and the submission threats are there. So I don't have any bets on this fight to this point, but I'm curious if you have anything worth betting on here, Tim.
I mean, I kind of agree with everything you said. It's just their money line is just a dogger pass just from age and seeing Sarge, you don't see end of round 2, end of round 3, her being able to typically do the same work that she does in the first round and a half. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the play, could be attacking it prop wise a little bit and trying to see if you're on the Cachoeira side, like I think she's way more likely to get the KO and like later in the fight, like you're saying, like round 2, round 3. So those lines aren't actually bad. If you look at like, you're getting like 10-1 and 16-1 on DK for KO1 or KO2, KO3. I mean, I think that's kind of like her path. So if you're on that side, I can see that. And I can also see round 1, like you're saying, possibly maybe early round 2 for Sarge, just getting in position. I mean, Luana Carolina was in mount and just beating the living shit out of Cachoeira. There's just so many people that have got just huge advantageous positions against her on the ground. All you basically have to do is get her on the ground, and she's just clueless. So that's why it's kind of like a fight where I understand like the money line, the favorite being Sarge, just from her having the grappling that she does. I mean, she's definitely capable of getting the fight to the ground. And if you can see Jillian Robertson, that takedown against her was pretty remedial and it was pretty easy. So I don't think that the wrestling, like if you just compare like the wrestling of a Robertson to Sarge, I think there's a huge difference there. And I think that she'll be able to get the fight to the ground early. It's just a question of, like you're saying, can she finish it or not? And I really, honestly, like you're saying, I really have no fucking clue. Like I don't want to really be putting a ton of money on these guys, but I think that if I'm going to be taking a stab on somebody, I'm probably going to be taking a stab at the 10 and 16-1 as opposed to like the plus 350 or plus 400 range on the round 1 or plus 450 range on the round 1 for Sarge.
Yeah, and if you agree with Tim, there's some really wild misprices out there. So I would just encourage you guys to do your due diligence. And, if your jurisdiction is offering some of these sports books, then I would go scalp them because they're way late on moving some of their numbers on the Cachoeira side. Now, with that being said, I do think it's a valid point. It really depends on who the referee is here. Oftentimes, when you see a really questionable early stoppage in MMA, it's on the women's side, where people preemptively jump in to save, a female MMA fighter. And Cachoeira, we know, is incredibly tough and willing to take a beating, but it will depend to a large degree who the referee is in there, because if it's the quote unquote no nonsense Keith Peterson, he might smell like booze and cigarettes and let her take some brain damage, but come back in round 3. So we really got to see who it's going to be, but I'm just playing. All respect. He's been around for a long time. So either way, we've got another 125-pound fight, but this one's going to be in the men's division. Jimmy Flick coming back from retirement, and he's taking on Charles Johnson here. Man, this guy Charles Johnson, I want to call him Slippery Charles Johnson because I could not get a hold of this guy. I thought Zhalgas Zhumagulov cashed that ticket, brother. I thought that we were already in the bag. I thought that we had that one. I thought I finally got some vengeance with my boy Zhalgas because I've gone down swinging with Zhalgas a few times now. And the truth is, I can't ever bet him again. He's retired, but also, he just can't let me down one more time. But the truth is, I thought he won that fight. Either way, I thought it was an extremely close fight. And to see him jump out here as a minus 500 favorite, you'd think I'd be the first one to come in and say, "Oh, that's crazy," whatever. But I can understand why the money came in so heavily on Charles Johnson here. Number one, just 700 plus day layoff for Jimmy Flick. A little bit hard to know what to expect, outside of the cage, outside the octagon, a lot more activity on the side of Charles Johnson, fighting guys like Makayev, fighting really talented fighters and going out there. And even Zhalgas Zhumagulov, extremely, well-versed, has fought a lot of the best guys in the division. So tells you a lot about where he's at potentially. And Jimmy, he's been on the receiving end of some knockout blows. Charles Johnson going to look to go out here and strike, going to look to keep it long, going to look to, fire away with some of his shots. Jimmy's not the most sophisticated striker, but he has been away for a while, could have been potentially improving some of those skills. But overall, you'd have to favor Johnson pretty cleanly on the feet. So then the question is, can Jimmy get his wrestling going, or can he find an opportunistic submission? And now I think that if you're looking to back Jimmy Flick, you can either get creative and scalp some of the, over 10-1 on him to win by decision if you think that he could out wrestle Charles Johnson. Because the truth is, if he could out wrestle Charles Johnson, it's not a guarantee that he's going to submit him, because Charles Johnson, that's the one thing you could really say to his credit. He's been out wrestled in a number of fights for various rounds and this and that, but he's never been submitted so far in MMA. He's fought some pretty good guys. Do I think Jimmy Flick is probably the most dangerous opportunistic submission guy he's fought? Yeah, he's up there. He's up there. Jimmy's a really unorthodox guy too, who's attempting flying triangles. Most people wouldn't even dream of it, but he's got a really weird style, and I like it about him. And I do think he's a dangerous fighter. I always talk about, I don't want to back somebody if I just think I have to rely on them to get it to a decision. Then it gives the other guy 15 minutes equity to work with that I don't have. I need somebody who's dangerous. I need somebody who could finish. So if I was to back Jimmy Flick here, I would be looking at probably either an individual prop on a method where I would target either the submission or the decision. I do not think he's going to be knocking out Charles Johnson in all likelihood. But I did think it was interesting that Zalgas kind of buzzed him one time or two in that fight, because Zalgas is not traditionally the biggest hitter. And he is getting right back in the cage. And that could be to benefit. You stay active, you don't get any ring rust, these kind of things. But it's also just an accumulation of damage and wear and tear, not really giving your body that much of a break. So I do wonder when that starts to catch up with Charles, but probably not here when he's a massive favorite. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I agree that Charles Johnson's Zalgas fight was actually kind of glorious. I had fight to end in split, and that was my only bet money line. Like that was only, I didn't take the money lines in that fight, but I just thought that it could be, Zalgas always fights close. And then I bet live. It was like plus fucking 800 or something like that on Johnson. It was ridiculous. And then of course they give him the fight, but that was pretty cool. Anyways, neither here nor there. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, the thing about Flick that scares me is, if he's shown just in multiple fights that if it just doesn't go his way, that he really doesn't want to be out there. Like, he doesn't take him long. There's a lot of early second round fights where if it just doesn't, he loses and gets knocked out in the second round, where he maybe has a little success in the first round grappling, but he doesn't get the submission. And then he tries to get it early in the second round and doesn't. And then he just basically gets rocked and then says, that's pretty much it. I'm done. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. So the only part about it where I kind of see what you're saying is that, like, Johnson hasn't finished anybody early, like, in his career. He's super slow starter, and he just doesn't seem to that doesn't seem to be his forte. So it just has to be that he connects on something, which is definitely possible because I think Flick's stand-up is just awful. So it's possible that he connects with something early, or if he connects something maybe, early in the first round as well. But I think that, like you're saying, that the early success, I think the sub is definitely more live, like round one early, when they're dry and when he has more wrestling success and cardio. But as the fight gets going, I think it's definitely starts leaning more towards Johnson. And I think that the KO is definitely live. And I just think that it's just a question of how aggressive he is with his striking. But, would I be shocked if either, like you said, if either one of these guys, if Flick, did take him down and was able to get some grappling and just kind of held him down a little bit in round two, or maybe just even one of the rounds and stole a 29-28, wouldn't be terribly shocked. But I also I'd be more shocked I'd actually be a little bit more shocked by like a Johnson decision if he just kind of soft cocks it and doesn't go for the kill in round 2 and 3 and just stays at distance. But that's the thing. I kind of lean more towards a round 2, round 3 finish for Johnson, that eventually he stays safe enough in round 1 and does his thing that he's pretty much done, gets in probably a little bit of trouble, but stays safe, and then probably gets a finish in either middle to late round 2 or early round 3.
You know what I'm finding interesting? Just scrolling through the topology of Charles Johnson, he's got 3 wins by split decision. This guy some guys just know how to win those really close fights, and maybe that's one of his tools in the toolbox. And that's the one thing that really concerns me, because truth be told, I think one of the valuable assets on betmma.tips, where I track my bets, is that I can go back and look at how I've bet on people in the past. And so it's always interesting to go back and look at how you've bet on these fighters before, because it gives you some perspective, that's not colored by recency, right? It's what you thought last time. And so last time Jimmy Flick was going to fight, which was over 700 days ago, right? So it's been a little while since I've tape studied him. I had Cody Durden, who's not a huge knockout guy, by knockout against him, plus 350. Now, what are you seeing in this line? Plus 100, minus 110, plus 110 for Charles Johnson to win by knockout. So it's nerfed completely. They're very hip to it this time. And, they kind of got off easy on it last time where they ended up paying out the Jimmy Flick by sub prop. And in this case, they're shaded towards both those outcomes. So for me, the bookmaker's pretty smart on this one. We've seen how many times when there's a long break, when the bookmaker opens the limit at 10,000, 15,000, they're not playing games. They have a better idea of where the market's going to move. And in this case, when they started getting hit heavily on the Charles Johnson side, they just reacted immediately and they tried to make it unplayable. So, I think in that case, now there's a lot of people who are going to come back on the value on Jimmy Flick. And I like Jimmy a lot, but I just think it's kind of a wait and see approach for me with Jimmy. After a 700+ day layoff, we often don't see that go very well in the UFC, especially the first time back. Can he come back and rise through the rankings and do it all? Absolutely not putting that past him. I'm just saying that in this fight, it's more of an experimental phase where we see, how does it look with 2 years out of the octagon now?
Do you think that Charles Johnson wins a decision here more often than not, or do you think he finishes him more often than not?
It's interesting to say. I would have to think I'd lean slightly towards the knockout here, but then again, given the division, given the fact that it really it depends what version of Jimmy Flick that we see. But he has been finished in the past. You gotta take account of how people lose as well as how people win. And in this case, it's just most common method of victory, most common method of loss. You start to juggle it a little bit. I feel like KO or decision is what I would think here. But they're even respecting, I believe, the Johnson submission prop, which was interesting to me. At least at some of the sharp markets. But anyway, we spent a lot of time on this one. We can move along to 145-pound bout with Daniel Argetta taking on Nick Aguirre, I believe is how you say it. And this is an interesting one. Argetta seems like kind of one of these bigger body guys for a bantamweight that's now up at the featherweight class. So it'll be interesting to see how it translates. We've seen, guys like Volk that kind of have that similar body type, a little bit smaller on the range side of the 145 division, except he's got kind of that freakish long reach. I don't think we're going to see that here. Freakish long reach and Daniel Argetta are not used in the same sentence very often. That being said, though, I think that this is a weird fight for me to call. You got two guys that would prefer to be on top. I think the guy who's got a clear advantage in getting on top is Argetta. But I have seen him reversed in Combate America's fights and give up some positions and kind of use some strength and athleticism to get himself back in a good spot. And I think that Aguirre, he's going to offer at least some interesting challenges. He's a little bit younger. He's got the background in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So this is especially one of the bigger favorites on the card that really stood out to me as a little bit odd. Yes, he was preparing for the fight. I think he should probably win the fight, but minus 600 on a guy who's pretty unproven in the UFC. One thing I always want to be weary of is like talking about how good somebody looked in a loss and like that being the selling point for everything that they're going to do moving forward. Example that comes to mind, David Onama. I think everybody was talking about the loss that he had to Mason Jones, where he looked good and he threw a lot of strikes and whatever, but he got hit with a million strikes. And then, Mason Jones ended up having a little bit of a fall off himself. So, it's kind of hard to evaluate these things. If Damon Jackson was to lose to Dan Ige, maybe that was to knock down the value of that loss a little bit, right? So I think that some of these things are a little bit contingent in this market at minus 600. Somebody who doesn't really have a lot of UFC experience, no interest in me back in the favorite here. It's a dogger pass situation for me. How do you feel about this one, Tim?
I just got to say, I love what you said about the looking at somebody's losses and just hyping them up on a loss is something that I've noticed that I did so often last year. I made a big adjustment in my game on that, where I was just super impressed by somebody. I'm like, what am I doing? I just keep betting these guys that fucking lose. And you just get impressed by a loss so much sometimes. And it doesn't mean anything. You just have to keep it all in perspective and keep looking back and try to reevaluate things. But I completely agree with that. That being said, I agree. I don't know. I taped more for Argetta. I did not do enough on the other side, but I agree with you saying. I just don't think that there's any way against anybody that's like that it's fought respectable guys or in a respectable organization at all. And I don't know that he's done that or is a okay fighter that Argetta should be like minus, I don't know, minus even 350 against many people, minus 400. So maybe he proves me wrong in that situation. But yeah, I just don't know enough on the other side. I'm going to probably do a little bit more tape on that and see if I can find a little bit more on him. And maybe I'll make a little small play on him. But it seems like it might be one of those fights that could be like really close back and forth grappling fight. And then it's tough to see who's kind of winning. And then you look at one side and you're looking like a fight goes or a decision with two guys and you're getting Aguirre at like, I don't know, plus 800 or something like that, or plus 900 by points. What is his decision prop?
So let me pull up the method market here. I'm seeing the best available price is plus 425, but it is starting to come down. It did peak at plus 500. And it's dropped back down to plus that's just for the money line. The decision prop here for Aguirre, and it's so hard with both these guys having AG as two of the first three letters of their name here, plus 1,200 on some of the more square markets out there.
That's
very, very wide line, it would seem. But the other thing is, I want to give some credit to Aguirre, right? He's fighting low-level guys. That's the truth, Tim. I did watch the tape on this guy. He's fighting very low-level guys. He's mostly just going out there, getting a double leg if he wants it, taking them down. And then, is he using systemic passing? Yes. Is he throwing a lot of ground and pound volume? Yes. Is he aggressive on the ground, looking for the finish with both the ground and pound strikes and submissions when they're available? Yes. So I think he, in that sense, is offering, a very good, consistent style for winning fights. But the problem is he's running into a guy who's probably just a little bit more physical, who's probably a little bit more likely to get on top in some of these ground exchanges. I do think because he's a little bit more of that ball of muscle, it's potential that he could gas out here. Damon Jackson's been known to slow down a little bit in that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th minute, especially as the fight gets a little bit later. He starts to, cling on to the guy a little bit looser and have a little bit less control over the fight in the situation. So I don't know how much of that was Argetta having a great, round 3 in him, or if that was just Damon Jackson tapering off and giving him an opportunity to pick up the pack, as they say, giving him that opportunity to get back in the fight. So for me, this is a really interesting fight. I don't know very much about Aguirre, having watched his tape, so I can't really confidently go out and bet him. But like you mentioned, plus 1,200 on a guy to win by decision in what ultimately amounts to what could be an LFA fight. I don't know. Like, it just seems a little bit wide to me, just because one guy knew about it a couple days earlier, or he was a little bit more prepared. But that being said, what have we seen with short notice guys over the years? We always think, maybe there's a chance with this guy. Then he gets steamrolled in a minute and a half. So best of luck to Nick Aguirre. I would be on his side or passing here just because of where the lines are at. Personally, that's how I'm feeling here. But we can move along to the next one. Back at 125 pounds, got the light, end of the spectrum here to get us started. So a lot of fast-paced action. And Alan Nascimento taking on Carlos Hernandez should be fast-paced, should be scrambly. But I got to say, the one thing that stood out the most to me watching that Carlos Hernandez tape was, Barres just easily taking his back in the first round and looking like he was going to finish the fight there. Felt like a couple of fundamental critical errors there. Now, coming out of VFS, Valley Flow Striking for Hernandez, very, very good gym. A lot of talented fighters coming out of there. But sometimes you see them make some interesting choices on the ground, I think their system is very offensive. And I think a lot of times that puts them in a position to find sneaky attacks, but also it puts them in a position to get the guard pass at times and give up some situations. I think maybe as their game develops, as they get older, as they get a little bit more mature in their career, somebody like a Yair Rodriguez, they really start to round out their skills on the ground, but it takes a little bit of time. It takes some lessons. And I think that was part of a lesson, but I think that Alan Nascimento is an even different level on the ground. I think he is a very dangerous guy. I think that he has submission prowess. We haven't seen it in some of these recent fights, but he's been taking on a lot of grappling archetypes, a lot of guys that can really wrestle, that can really grapple, that can scramble with him at a very high level. And in this case, if you're giving up the back position to guys on the Contender Series in the first round and potentially losing that fight, I think that this could be a world of trouble for you. Alan Nascimento's got a lot of experience at this level. And when he went back down to the regional scene level guys, he was submitting them in the first round, so I think that Hernandez is tough. He's scrappy. He's not going to be easy to put away if this fight gets extended. If this fight gets extended, he's going to be sweaty. He's going to be moving. He's going to be grabbing hold of wrists. He's going to be just trying to make it awkward, make it scrambly, and force a dirty fight where he could do some damage and try and get that path to victory. Get some cuts, get some bruising, get on top of him, get some exchanges where Nascimento, who's comfortable in the guard, maybe concedes a guard position looking for a guillotine, and then he's stuck underneath for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. That's what you're going to have to see, in my opinion, from Hernandez, or he's going to have to sprawl and brawl his way to a victory here. Otherwise, I do just think Alan Nascimento is probably going to be a step ahead of him in the grappling. He's very talented. And he's got sophisticated attacks, man. He can work to the leg attacks as well. And I just liked what I've seen from him in all these scrambles. He's been going with high level guys that know how to grapple and doing very well, and normally outwitting them and being very creative in how he does so. It's not easy to prepare for guys like this. You don't just find guys like this off the street most of the time that have those skills. And that have those nuances in their position. So for me, I kind of like the Alan Nascimento side here. Bookmakers really respecting him to win this fight inside the distance. When's the last time you've seen a bookmaker respect an Alan Nascimento inside the distance? It don't happen. So I think that, I would always say that he had asparagus. He got a good night's rest. He did everything right. And maybe some more extracurriculars. But as far as I'm concerned, is Hernandez, a scrappy guy? If this fight gets to a decision, yeah, maybe he could grit out a decision. Maybe he makes it close and ugly. Maybe he steals another one. But if this fight ends inside the distance, I'd have to think it's my man, Alan Nascimento, getting to a dominant position and finding the finish. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards here. Alan Nascimento inside the distance. Don't love the prices, though. So do I feel compelled on the first card of the year to start just flying out units at plus 210 props in the flyweight division for guys to end by sub? Not really. But is that how I anticipate this fight ending? Yeah, that's how I anticipate the fight ends. I think Alan Nascimento finds a submission here. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. I think he finds a submission, and I think he probably finds it round one. Just like you said, Hernandez just doesn't do really anything that you should be confident in against a guy like Nascimento from a grappling standpoint defensively. I mean, like you're saying, he's scrappy offensively, but I think also Nascimento is fucking huge for this division. It's just, like you said, the vitamins are a real deal. It's basically like a split decision on the other side for Hernandez. If you're on him, I would just be on his split decision prop is pretty nice. His decision prop, I don't think there's any shot that he finishes Nascimento on the feet, and I don't think that there's any shot that he subs him. So you're getting a much, much better line than his money line than you would on points and split decision for him. So if you're on that side, I would take those shots. But I think Nascimento by sub is same deal. I just think his money line is kind of an unplayable line for a dude that plays guard and fucks around and can be taken down and all these things that you just don't want to ever be laying heavy juice on. So, it's a no-brainer, no bet for me on him there. But I probably will take a small stab on the sub and sub one for him.
I like where your head's at, my man. That's probably what I would do too. I think I'm just going to end up laying off it, but I've liked backing Alan Nascimento a few times in the past as an underdog. I think, didn't always get the respect that he deserved for being a pretty talented fighter. That's what I saw on the tape. But admittedly, some of his decision-making for MMA is not what you'd want it to be. He's a little bit jiu-jitsu heavy, but, that's a man after my own heart. And he does a lot of really cool jiu-jitsu things. He does them well. So that's why I like him. And I hope that he does well in this fight. I think he's kind of being given a very winnable fight here. And, for all intents and purposes, I think that this is a fight that he should win, especially if he wants to contend at any point, if he wants to move up the ranks here. So Alan Nascimento is the pick for me, and we can move along to the next fight here. It's going to be taking place at 135 pounds. Mateus Mendonca. He's a guy I cashed in on the Contender Series, man. I like this guy. He's taking on Javid Basharat. I don't like that for him, man. Very tough, very tough. So when you look at this fight, I think that Javid Basharat is just a clear level above as a prospect when it comes to Mateus Mendonca. But the thing is, I do see a lot of people backing Javid with confidence this week, which I understand because I do think he's better. But when you got one guy who's got this, like, real power, it seems like, in Mendonca, which is pretty rare for this division. You don't see a ton of guys. Granted, at 135, definitely more than 125, but not a lot of guys can just get you out of there with one big shot. And we have seen that from him a number of times on the regional scene. Yes, he's got a questionable-ish record, but it's better than some of these guys that we see come in here with the, 0-1 and the 0-2. At least these other people had fights. They just weren't winning all of them, right? They were pretty questionable journeyman type fighters for the most part. But I think that what we saw from him on the Contender Series is that this is the kind of guy that Dana White likes to get behind. This is the kind of guy that he likes to support. So that's why I found it interesting that they're matching him up with Javid here. I think Javid has a clear path in this fight, which is to take the fight to the ground. Javid has just proven that he's pretty sophisticated on the ground in terms of his passing systems, in terms of his ability to get off with damage. And then moreover, his ability to turn that into advantageous positions where he could try and work between submissions and attacking with strikes. And I think that that's what makes him a dynamic fighter. He moved from the London Shoot fighters to Extreme Couture. And if you guys haven't noticed, Extreme Couture's contingency of bantamweights is absolutely world-class. Aljamain Sterling, Patchy Mix, Javid Basharat and his brother. Like, you're just seeing a lot of talented bodies come through that gym, especially around that weight class. And I think that's something to take note of. They got the best training partners in the world. And that's something I can't sleep on here. So Mendonca, guy that I'm going to look to continue to support in the future. But I don't think this is a great matchup for him the deeper I looked into it. So earlier in the week, I had told some people who just asked me, like, hey, what's your gut level on this fight? I thought Mendonca is probably a little bit more live than that money line indicates. But then the deeper I looked into it, I was like, it's hard to say, because I do think that Javid just has a way to negate this fight for being dangerous for him. I think if he chooses to strike this out, he's a dangerous striker. He's got good long tools. He can make a lot work on the feet. But I do think that's playing with fire, because Mendonca swings hammers and he can really hurt people. So that's the one thing that I would caution people with in this fight, is that Mendonca looks like he might be on the supplements. He looks like he's been saying his prayers and going to bed early and doing all the right things in that regard. So he swings hammers, and I wouldn't want to be on the other side of those. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I've loved Javid since the Contender Series, cashing against that absolute can that talked all that shit to him before the fight. That was a great cash. Yeah, I mean, he's just really just impressed me every fight, more and more, actually. Like, the Gravely fight was super impressive. I was mainly concerned in that fight with him. I thought he would kill him on the feet, and I was mainly concerned that kind of the same thing in this fight. Like, I was like, he's probably going to kill him on the feet. He's got to worry about Gravely just crushing him with one big shot. And then I was mainly concerned on, like, what's going to happen on the wrestling here? I know he's a good wrestler. I know he's good on the ground, but, is he going to be able to stop takedowns? And he was just so much better wrestling than Gravely was in that fight. So I was super impressed by that. Yeah, this fight, I just don't think that I think it's kind of KO or bust, and meme KO bust for Mateus. And I just think I just don't get the matchmaking for, trying to build up a new dude that you're bringing into the UFC and you're giving him Javid. Just doesn't really make sense. So only question in my mind is, like, is this inside the distance, or is this a point fight? He kind of just, like you're saying, the more if he goes your route and he gets him down to the ground, I kind of think inside the distance is way more live and probably more likely, like round 2, round 3 just kind of breaks him. But if he stands with him the whole fight, I don't see, like, I'm sure he could still connect on something and kill him, but I haven't seen the type of same finishing instinct standing from Javid as I have seen from the ground. Like, when he gets people on the ground, he seems way more, like, aggressive and going for finishes than he does on the feet. But maybe that'll change, and maybe I'm off on that read. I don't know what you think, but
it's interesting, man. I'm just looking at how the sharp bookmakers are pricing this. They got Basharat to win by submission plus 215 at Bet Online. So they're really heavily leaning towards that submission line here against Mendonca. Mendonca to win by sub, conversely, plus 1,300. So the sharp bookmakers not thinking Mendonca is going to be showing off his, his submission chops. They think that if Mendonca gets it done here, it's going to be a knockout. They're shaded about 50 cents off the market average there for Mendonca by knockout to plus 700. And really very tight market width on Mendonca by knockout. That's kind of interesting. Just plus 700 to plus 800. Nobody's really moving outside that band. That's where they're pretty comfortable with it. And, you'd think that that would be a little bit more closely correlated with his win equity. But again, this is a bantamweight fight. One of the things that the MMA public can be accused of doing is over, violent, like basically we think it's going to be more violent than it is, right? We always expect it's going to be a finish. And the truth is, in the bantamweight division, it's probably going to go over at a decent clip. It's probably going to end up being a fight that goes to a decision. So then when you think about who's going to probably win more minutes in this fight, that's where Javid Basharat becomes a little bit more of the clear favorite here. I think that in terms of just if these guys stand up on the feet, I'd struggle to make Javid this big of a favorite in just a pure stand-up contest between the two of them because I don't think that Javid has as much natural stand-up power. Just in one single shot, I don't see him rocking as many people, hurting as many people as Mendonca. And the other thing to keep in mind here, folks, is Mendonca is going to be at a slight height disadvantage here, but he does have the reach advantage on paper of 2.5 inches. He is 4 years younger here, 23 years old, coming out of Brazil, a country that just overall in the UFC wins at a pretty high rate. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. But I think, again, the thing to like about Basharat, trained with the London Shoot Fighters and now Extreme Couture, two extremely high-level gyms, and he's getting, some of the best rounds in the world with Aljamain Sterling and company. So I would not sleep on him, but I think Understand Boxing makes some good points here. Mendonca is stronger, might just overpower him. I think that that's possible. I think that Mendonca is a very athletic guy, and I think he's dangerous here. So I would not be backing Javid personally, but again, I do think that he should be favored to win the fight. Just think the line's probably a little bit wide here. So, Javid minus 230, minus 250. I get, this seems a little bit wide to me. So it would be a dog or pass situation. But again, probably just going to lay off this one here because Mendonca, we don't know a ton about him, hasn't been tested by very good guys, not on the Contender Series, not on his regional scene. So this is a pretty big step up in competition. Two undefeated guys, but the quality of their undefeated records a little bit different. And that could be ultimately what makes the difference. But athleticism is real, power is real. So I think, sometimes we also discount the possibility that the underdog comes through in meme-like fashion. And it does happen. How many times have we said, I can't believe that? That's the UFC. So I think Javid should be favored here, but probably not going to be betting on him in this spot because I don't know how he's going to get it done, man. It's a little too volatile for me. And the bookmakers thinking it's a lock that he wins by sub here. I'm not sure if I agree. So we'll see it out. Next up, oh boy, I've been excited for this guy to make his debut in the UFC, but now it's absolutely, blown out. There's absolutely no money line value on my guy, Mateusz Rebecki, taking on Nick Fiore here. And Fiore is coming out of the New England cartel. His claim to fame is that he is a jiu-jitsu coach for the likes of Calvin Kattar and some of these guys from the New England cartel. I believe Rob Font as well. So very interesting to see him making his UFC debut here. Fiore only 6-0. Again, I talked about some of the records that we would see on the card being way worse than somebody like Mendonca. 5-19, 15-13, 8-4, 3-9, 15-98. My goodness, that was Jay Ellis twice. Like, this guy has not fought very quality competition. So he's taking a big step up here against Mateusz Rebecki. And Mateusz Rebecki, he's a dangerous fighter, guys. Everything I saw from him on the regional scene showed me that he's tough. He throws heavy hands. He's willing to get in somebody's face and push a fight. And he's willing to go for takedowns after takedowns after takedowns, get on top of somebody, and then dominate them physically. He's extremely strong. He's got a low center of gravity. He's got big muscles, grabs a hold of people, rides the wrist, and he's extremely dominant. He could pass and do damage with ground and pound, and he could also lock up submissions. So I think he's a really dangerous fighter. I think that, Fiore is probably going to have some pride here. He's probably not going to want to get submitted, but I have a feeling he's going to get held down and probably hit with some really hard shots here, and probably eventually finished. I would think second or third round here, Mateusz Rebecki, ground and pound TKO. What do you think, Tim?
I love that you say that, because it's one of these fights where you just want to, you never can bet minus 700 money line. So it's just basically like, all right, what are we going to attack prop wise? And, round 2 is plus 460, round 3 is plus 1,000. So you need to basically, and round 1's plus 100. So it's basically like you have just one of those situations where you want to hit the guy at inside the distance props, even inside the distance. What do you think of the inside the distance is minus 290 now? You can't play that. But like, I thought it was like minus 250 was somewhat playable. But the round props, like you're saying, if you go round 2, round 3, and just hope that he survives a round, come on, Fiore, you can do this, right? So that would kind of be my play if I was going to bet this. I don't think there's any other way. I think the KO is more likely than the submission, but just not uber confident in it. But definitely like the taking a shot maybe on the plus 460, plus 1,000 on the round props, and praying for the guy to hold.
You son of a gun, Tim. I was just going to imply it without saying it, but I actually have my eye on those exact same props. So very well done. I think that's a good eye. The one thing I have to say, though, is I was really impressed with Rodrigo Liggio coming into the Contender Series, and I thought Rebecki was going to win. I bet him to win by sub. But by God, I did not think he was going to do that to him, because Liggio is a really tough guy, and he was no pushover from everything I had seen on the regionals, and he got folded up there. So that's what told me this guy Rebecki is a little bit different, and that's what makes me scared of fading him in round 1. But again, hopefully we just get a guy running away, out of respect. I hope he runs away. I hope he ducks, covers, Imanari rolls. I hope the 12 people in the apex
just grabs guard.
I just wanted to get to the later rounds and give us a chance to get something that's not plus 100 or some bogus nonsense. Let's get some nice plus money to start the new year. But either way, my man, we can catch up on the next fight here. Oh, boy. This is a fight I'm going back and forth on all week. That's normally the kind of fight that I should just not bet. Like, I think that it would probably be sound, to not bet on this fight. We've got in the 185-pound division, the debuting Claudio Ribeiro taking on Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. And it's an interesting fight because, I was trying to come to some conclusion, and maybe you have an idea here. I didn't have a better idea for this, but is this the first time that Abdul Razak Al-Hassan might have a grappling advantage on paper, like a clear grappling advantage?
100%, yes.
So this is for me.
And cardio.
And it's fascinating that you say that, because I agree. I think that this is the first time he's going to have a grappling and a cardio advantage. But let me tell you the thing that's so interesting about this matchmaking, Tim. This is the first time that I can remember that the other guy, not Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, is being aligned as more likely to win by knockout and more likely to win by knockout in round 1. And isn't that fascinating how it gets to it's like this point in everyone's career where the flip of the switch happens. And, Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, a guy who's known for his explosive power, he's a guy who's known for needing to, maybe find that knockout in round 1, or he's going to struggle to win, still has yet to get across the finish line in a decision, and no dice there. So for Abdul, I think that this is a winnable fight. But do I know exactly what we're going to get out of him? Man, it's very hard to say. For Abdul, this is a fight where he should wrestle. He should grapple. He should take out that judo belt and dust it off and go out there and look for throws, because Claudio Ribeiro just looked a little bit lost on the ground, which is ironic given his name, right? It sounds like the name of a guy who would be tying you up in knots with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I don't think Claudio Ribeiro is a very sophisticated ground player. He seems more like a big blitzing banger who likes to throw down on the feet. And so with that being said, I think that Abdul could get takedowns here. I think he could end up on top. I think he could outlast this guy and maybe be a little bit fresher. late into this fight. But do I want to bank on it? Given the fact that I'm not even getting plus money, I'm not like, I would understand the passion behind the Abdul Razak takes if I could get some plus money, but minus 105, minus 115, it's a little bit tougher just because Abdul's let us down a number of times. And, Joaquin Buckley, what has been his problem historically in the UFC or even prior to the UFC? He gets knocked out. Right. And what is giving me some concern here, some pause? This guy didn't knock him out, So does he just not knock people out anymore? Has he lost the power? Has he lost the dynamism? Is that the problem? Or is that just, lying in wait? But the bookmaker seems to think that he's kind of lost it, and they think this other guy has more of it. So that's, for me, what's ultimately so tricky about this fight and how it's lined. And it's going to keep me on the sidelines for now. What do you think about this fight? Is there any props that you're taking a look at?
This is the hot take. You were talking about the hot take. Am I going to have any hot takes that are as hot as your coffee? I'll say that this will be my hot take in this one. I think that there's a chance. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying that there's a very good chance that this fight goes, but I think that there's a better chance than people think that this fight could go the distance. And I think that it involves what you're saying. It involves like cage push and some judo from Abdul, but I think it's possible that you could see it. He has wrestled, and he did against Buckley, and he's never had the fight where he gets to basically Malkoon somebody. Like, he just got Malkoon. Like, he just had this happen to him. So in my mind, I think that there's a possibility that this guy could actually take this path. I'm not super confident that he does, but if he does, the overs are like super live and the unders are fucked pretty much. I think that the other thing is like, how often do we see these guys that are just super front loaded, blow their wad in the first round, and then just do nothing for the second and third rounds and just stare at each other and just like gas and just like occasionally go at it, and then, maybe have a few exchanges for like the next 10 minutes, but it's just dog shit fight for the rest of the fight. It's common, right? So add on the fact that Abdul's been finished one time by knockout in his 5 losses, and the other are all decisions. It's like 12-1 by decision on Claudio if he does have bigger shots and he has more volume, because Abdul doesn't throw shit and doesn't throw a lot of volume himself, and they're both power hunters. It's like, I can see this fight going, as well as like you're getting 10-1 and 12-1 on both fighters to win by decision. It's like, and then you're getting crazy numbers on the overs and fight goes. So I kind of lean like that route more than taking a shot on either one of these guys' money lines, because they're totally unreliable, both unreliable in my opinion. And I just don't want to put money on either one of these guys in general. So yeah, I might take a small stab at like some of the, the over prop or something like that, or like the fight goes or the points. But yeah, no bets as of right now. No, definitely not a confident lean or betting a lot on that. But that would kind of be my hot take. Like, if this fight goes, you're going to be looking at guys getting 10 and 12-1 to win by decision, which is kind of crazy. I think 3 out of the last 5 fights from Al Hassan have gone to decision. Yeah, I don't.
And Tim, even if you just want to simplify it, plus 520 to go to decision.
Fight goes, yeah.
Which is absolutely unreal, honestly.
Right?
Like, that's a very rare number to see. And one thing that comes to mind is like some of the most heavy lines on fights to go the distance are the ones that end up like I think of a Rodolfo Vieira and Chris Curtis. I think that was one that everybody was thinking was going to end up. I
cashed on that one too. I had 10-1 on Curtis by decision there. Same exact fight. There's other ones. There's other ones that everybody always gets shitty about. Fucking Costa versus Rockhold. Like, all day long, these guys are like, it's ridiculous the lines that you get on the fight goes on those. Like you're saying, you don't even have to pick the decision, like who's going to win the decision. Just go fight goes. You're getting 5 or 6-1. It's like bonkers.
It's bonkers.
I'm not saying that I don't think that somebody fucking dies in the first 3 minutes, because that is pretty much what I think.
Possible.
I think that's way more likely to happen. But then you look at the lines and you just say, okay, plus 500 to win to fight goes. It's not. I don't think it's that. I think if the fight, put it this way, if a fight starts round 2, don't you think that the fight goes like, I don't know, probably 50-50 or 40-60 in that situation if they reach round 2 and they haven't killed each other by that point?
I mean, I think that if it goes past 1 round, it's very likely that it goes to decision. It just becomes so much more likely. The other thing is we have seen this archetype of fight before where you get 2 power punchers and they just are afraid to engage. So they both throw 35 strikes and nobody lands anything. Think Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis, where they both just feint at each other, throw a couple leg kicks and taunt. It becomes very strange sometimes when 2 power punchers get in there. Nobody wants to get knocked out in MMA. In this case, I think especially if somebody takes a reserved approach, what happens when you get 2 guys out there who could strike? Whoever's a better wrestler gets on top and they sit in the full guard for 15 minutes. We've seen it from time immemorial. So I think that certainly that's a good way to look at it. And, maybe if you put a little bit on the, good call, Cirillo. I'm also looking at my screen over here. So I'm working on it, but either way, the one thing that scares me is, like we mentioned, if the fight ends in the first 3 minutes, massive reach advantage to Ribeiro. So I would feel like that actually does favor him. If they just start swinging wildly in the pocket, I think Razak, for the first time in his life, needs to extend this fight and get on top and use that judo thunder, and he could get the win in this fight. So best of luck to Judo Thunder, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, putting on for the boys. If anything, small wager for me on, maybe some contrarian overs and contrarian fight goes to decision. But I will say minus 900 on DraftKings. Minus 900 on the fight doesn't go to decision.
Who's parlaying that this week?
I don't know. Somebody will be.
Somebody will be.
I know somebody. Next up, guys, we've got a bantamweight fight, and it's going to be between Umar Nurmagomedov and Raoni Barcelos here. This is another interesting fight, and a fight that people will be talking about all week, because speaking of minus 900, that's the best available current price, and it's on FanDuel Sportsbook for Umar Nurmagomedov to win this fight on the money line. Massive favorite. Believe I would be stunned if he is not the biggest favorite on the card, and he is. I just double-checked. Started at a minus 200 clip here, opening up on Bet Online. Been bet all the way down to a minus 1,000 favorite, market average minus 987 here. So huge favorite here, and not something we're used to seeing. I'll tell you, Tim, in this bantamweight division, how often do we see a minus 1,000 favorite of any stripe? Not very common. So do you think it's justified? Do you think the hype is real on Umar Nurmagomedov? What do you think about this fight?
This is weird, because this is clearly like a lot of people's, plant your flag fight, where you get these, it almost seems like I'm going to say both sides. Like, I think that Umar is a potential champion in this division. So I think that that's definitely possible. I think there's still, I want to see like certain things, and I still want to see a little bit from him. I want to see people that if he has to stay standing with somebody for 15 minutes or 25 minutes, what happens if he doesn't have as much grappling success? And at the same time, it's like I think like minus 200 to minus 300 is right, and it just keeps going, and people keep parlaying him, and it just keeps going, and now the other side, it's like you almost have to maybe take a small stab at the money line on Barcelos, but I also am the same person that bet Barcelos versus Victor Henry, so I know that feeling too. So like he seems to be definitely on a decline. The last fight was a very, very good performance, but the Victor Henry fight for me is just a huge red flag just in general. Like, just if the fight was standing in that one and he doesn't proactively grapple in that one, but it's one of those situations where I think that the skill set always for Barcelos has always been like, man, this guy's so fucking good, and he just underachieves in my mind over and over and over in a lot of these fights that that I've seen. And I've always kind of gotten bitten by betting this guy. So I think he's really fucking good. And I feel like if I bet on him again, I'm going to get bit again. But it's one of those fights where I just think that people are going to value chase on him because of the number and because it's the right number, and it's just math, and they're going to take those shots. But I feel like Umar's probably going to win. He's probably going to win. I don't want to even say prop wise, man, because I could see him submitting him, to be honest. Like I could see him winning just a complete boring ass decision. So the only thing I don't really see is as a KO from Nurmagomedov. Maybe he gets a head kick or something stupid, but I more see like a kind of a slow, boring ass decision from him, and him getting a couple of takedowns and being able to consolidate position and not being too overzealous and too over aggressive with his positions. But I do think that if Brownie gives up his back at all, he's fucked. And I think that if in that situation that he will get choked out. So giving up his back, he gets subbed. If he doesn't, he just plays guard and plays position. I think he'd be just a boring ass decision for Umar. I don't think that I'm going to take a shot on Rowney just because of the number, but it is. I am not hating anybody. I totally understand anybody that is taking a shot on him.
Yeah, man, this is a weird one. Just in one regard, I mean, I obviously think that Umar is going to win the fight, right? We can get that out of the way early, but the implied win probability has shifted 23.3% so far from opening on Raoni Barcelos. So I do think it's pretty fair to say the value has sailed on the Nurmagomedov side. If you parlayed him at the minus 300 tag, God bless you for it. You got in early. But at this point, it's really difficult, to imagine you're getting value. They're giving 13%, less than that even on some books, chance for Raoni Barcelos to win this fight. So I think that I can't fault anybody for taking the shot. Early in the year last year, I think there was a couple of these bigger upsets. I'll take the W on. I had Victor Henry in that fight against Raoni Barcelos on the money line, but I also had Victor Henry to win by submission against Rafael Assunção when he got absolutely audited. So I have not been completely right on Victor Henry, but I thought he was alive. I thought he had a lot to bring to the table there. And to be honest with you, I thought it was going to be a much more ground-heavy fight. And instead, it was a volume-heavy attack on the feet. He threw a lot of straight punches. He threw a ton of volume. And so what was interesting to me is that that's not what we see from Umar at all, ever. It's like the guy who beat him isn't a good archetype really for Umar. Umar throws a lot of kicks. He likes to grapple. Those are the two things that he does the most. He mostly boxes as a utility to reestablish range to kick you. So I think that it's possible that Umar will land a big kick in this fight and knock out Raoni Barcelos. And I don't think a lot of people are ready to hear that, but just Raoni's getting a little bit older, cutting down these weight classes, going against guys that are really tricky and can throw spin kicks to multiple levels of the body. That's really hard to deal with, especially, after you've had a long career, after you absorbed 100+ significant strikes against Victor Henry and didn't go down, but you absorbed a ton of shots there, a ton of damage, and really fought and put his heart on his shield there. So did he look career best against Trevin Jones? Yes. And he's a class above him. After the fact, that was very clear. I think that Umar, it's hard to say he's a class above Raoni Barcelos, which is what you'd have to really say here to get to this price at minus 1,000. You'd have to say it's just not even two guys within the same league. And in the early going in this fight, I think Raoni Barcelos will be extremely competitive. I just think it's a fight where he probably loses by a hair in most exchanges that matter. I think that the punches that he throws look a little bit less impactful than the kicks that will land for Umar, a little bit less flashy. I think that if somebody ends up on the receiving end of a reactive takedown, it's more likely to be Raoni. But I don't think it's going to be a complete auditing on the ground either, because Raoni Barcelos is really skilled. He's really talented in all positions. I would be kind of stunned if that happened, but aging happens quick sometimes in combat sports as well. And Umar's a young guy, and sometimes you see it in the gym, you see it, wherever you see it in the octagon, guys that are really, really good and really talented just get passed by somebody who's younger and really hungry and just still sticking around doing it. And that for me is what could happen here. If we see Raoni Barcelos get finished, it would mostly just be, the game catching up with him a little bit. I think the UFC pretty strategically positioned him to not get the fights he needed in his prime to be one of the best in the world and to be in the top 5 and the top 10 in the division, because he's a respectful guy and he's pretty quiet and he's down to earth and he's got some skills and he's also dealt with injuries. So, timing's everything in mixed martial arts. And I think a couple of years back, Barcelos would have certainly been live here, but I just don't know exactly what product we're going to get in this fight. I think the Trevin Jones fight was a lot more of a soft landing than this. That's from the frying pan straight to the fire, as they say, because now he's got a really tough test in Umar. And I think that Umar is probably going to win, but again, not inspired to bet anything on this fight. Even the decision prop here, if you think Raoni's going to tough it out, it's -200. It's like, what am I supposed to dig into there?
I have a thought on that because I was just looking at something. I was just like, I was super curious as to what the split decision would be, because I thought, like, if Barcelos wins, it has to be like a greasy ass split decision, right? Like, in my opinion, it's really tough to see any kind of like other way for him to win. I know it's MMA, but so his split decision is 35-1. That's pretty good. But like the fight the fight to end in split, like if you have a 35-1, it's like usually the fight to end in split is like, I don't know, 10-1, 12-1 range. It's 4-1. Like, so that's fucking crazy. That's like the most insane. That's like a 50 cents worse.
They're basically telling you it's going to end in split and Umar's going to win.
Yeah, right. Like, that's like the same, like his split decision is almost the same as that. But fight one by unanimous decision, it just not him in general, just anybody to win is, -135, which isn't terrible. Like, if you think that Umar wins a decision, I'm pretty sure it's a unanimous decision in this situation. Like, I know that I just said that it's the other side has it. I just think that getting from -200 to -135 is not bad, and you're hoping that he wins a 29-28 or a 30-27 pretty unanimously. I think that's, if you think he wins a decision, that's pretty much getting the line down to a bettable position.
I like it, man. I'm looking right now at Tapology, and 95% of the Tapology predictions have Umar Nurmagomedov. So Tapology is lining up with the market. Everybody thinks it's going one-way traffic here. But value boys mount up. Best of luck, boys. Probably going to sit this one out. But I guess if we see 10, 12, something to 1 on Raoni, I mean, who would I be if I didn't throw a quarter unit at that point? But I mean, certainly favoring the favorite here, Umar Nurmagomedov, to get the job done on the main card, and probably a third rounder decision. I think he's going to have to cook Raoni and get it done late, or he's going to have to finish the fight out on the scorecards and get the win that way. That being said, we'll turn the corner to the next fight. Ketlen Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington. And guys, I've gotten a lot of grief for this one. I was pretty happy when Ketlen Vieira won that fight against Holly Holm. I thought she won the fight. I thought she was a little bit more effective with her strikes. But tell you the truth, got robbed on a lot of split decisions last year, folks. That was one that I got across the finish line, and I was happy about it. So I had a big bet on Ketlen Vieira there. I thought she was the value side. And I also bet her against Miesha Tate. So Ketlen Vieira is somebody I've been getting in the corner of in some of her recent bouts. Why? What's the theory behind it? Ketlen Vieira for me was a fighter that became undervalued because she got knocked out by Irene Aldana. And now we've seen a few women get knocked out by Irene Aldana. She's a dangerous fighter, right? And Ketlen Vieira, she also has a multivariate skill set. She can fight the fight at distance, on the feet, throw some strikes, get off at volume, keep it competitive there, throw with a little bit more power than some women, throw with a little bit more volume than other women. And additionally, we've seen that she could dominate some fights from the back. She can get a hold of women. She can attempt submissions. The problem with Ketlen Vieira is that her effective aggression hasn't always been there, right? I feel like sometimes she could just turn up the heat a little bit on the feet and get these women out of there. She's doing a lot of damage. She's busting up the face, but she's really not sitting down on her shots and trying to take somebody out. Similarly, when she gets to these advantageous positions on the ground, she's not always opening up with the ground and pound like you'd want to see and just forcing a finish. She's kind of content to ride out the positions, be sound, be safe, be a little bit conservative, a little bit defensive. And you hear Andre Pederneiras screaming at her every fight, Ketlin, go, attack. Like he's like he's pleading with her in all these fights. Whenever you see the translations as well, he's trying to get her to just throw more volume because she's so big and strong. When she throws and lets anything go, it hurts people. It busts up their face. And I think she lost some of her confidence when she got knocked out by Irene Aldana. And I think slowly over time, she's rebuilt it and she's got it back. And I think she has that confidence now. She's just beaten two of her idols, two of the former champions in the division. I think this is a fight she'll be a little bit more violent, a little bit more aggressive. Not like Raquel Pennington's a bad guy or anything like that, but just in terms of the upper echelon, like people that she admired in the division, the two champions, she's now beaten two former champions. I think that in this fight, we are going to see some wrestling and grappling exchanges. Spafferon in the comments, shout out Spafferon, says Rocky going to wrestle. I think she's going to get thrown if she does. I truly do. I think that the hips are no joke for Ketlin Vieira. I think that she's very talented with her judo. And we've seen her get the better of, people that can really wrestle and grapple. Sarah McMahon comes to mind. She was able to take her down and get on top of her and finish her. Obviously, Sarah McMahon's had some problems with people doing that in her career, but she's one of the few who was able to get it done, reverse position, get on top of her, get takedowns, and get the finish with the submission in that fight. Similarly, against Kat Zingano, was able to get the takedowns, dominate Kat Zingano, another talented fighter who prefers to go out there and dominate with the wrestling and grappling. Look at the career history of Raquel Pennington. She's been taken down in recent fights by Macy Chiasson, of all people, not known for her wrestling prowess prior to that. And then you see some other fights where I just have, my questions about Raquel Pennington, needing a little bit of these comeback victories, needing to win rounds 2 and 3, needing to grit it out. This is all after taking what I consider a potential career-changing beating against Amanda Nunes. She tells her corner, I don't want to go back out. They tell her, you have to go back out. She goes back out and gets finished. Can't be good for your confidence, can't be good for your relationship with your coaches. Just a lot of things, in my opinion, that went wrong in that fight. Can she bounce back? Maybe, but she's 3 years older. Ketlin Vieira is the younger fighter here. She's a little bit bigger. She's got a little bit bigger frame. I think she has arguably better jiu-jitsu. I think that she's 4-0 in her career to the submission compared to 4-1 in her career to the submission for Raquel Pennington. Common opponent, Kat Zingano, unanimous decision win, I believe, for Ketlin Vieira. On the other side, submission loss for Raquel Pennington, something to keep in mind there. They both have wins over Holly Holm. They both have been competitive with some of these ladies in the division. But when you look at where does Raquel Pennington win a lot of her fights, she dominates in the clinch. I think she's going to have a hard time dominating somebody like Ketlin Vieira in the clinch, who's very big, very physical, and can tend to operate from there. She just won a 5-round main event that was largely contested in the clinch when she was in disadvantageous positions in the double underhooks. So for me, I think that Ketlin Vieira is being consistently undervalued in the market. I think the money line market is starting to adjust, but I think that if she fights with a little bit more aggression, the finishes are live. I think she's got big power in her hands. I think Raquel has been hurt in a couple of these recent fights, and I think that she could get hurt here. And I think she's got a family. She's got things going on outside the cage where she might be willing to, turn the page on her life and move on. Where Ketlin Vieira seems fired up to try and get a title shot. I think one more win and she gets it. I like Ketlin Vieira to get it done.
Yeah, man, I love that breakdown. I'm not going to add very much except for this fight just screams split decision to me just in general. Both of these fighters fight extremely, extremely close. Both of these fighters have similar game styles. Vieira, like you're saying, I've screamed like her corner screamed at the TV multiple times when she's fighting because I have violence bets on her and round 2, round 3 bets on her. So yeah, I'm in the same boat as her corner, but that's the problem is that she doesn't do that historically. So she fights and she's relying on moments. So I could definitely see the volume and the striking being close and more kind of leaning towards Rocky in the volume side. I think she's going to be maybe a little bit better in that realm. But like you're saying, like if this gets into the clinch, I just don't know what's going to happen at that point. That's where it gets really interesting. And I kind of want to see. I don't want to make a live. I'd prefer to live bet this fight. There's a bunch of fights in this card where I'd prefer to just chill out money line wise and watch the first 2-3 minutes of the fight and see, stylistically what I think is going to happen matchup wise, and be like, all right, now I'm going to attack this way, because there's a lot of unknowns going into it with some of these contender series fighters, some of these guys with not a lot of tape. And this is exactly one of those fights where once I see like what's happening in the clinch and what's happening on the cage and how these fighters are going about their business, I think I'll confidently attack one side at that point. But if you're gun to head pre-fight, I would lean Vieira for the same reasons that you're saying. And it's just, I just feel like she's stronger physically, bigger. And I just, that to me is like almost always, if I'm 50-50 on a fight in women's MMA, I'm just going who's stronger, who's more physical than I think that she is. So I would lean that way slightly.
I hear you, my man. And I'll tell you what, I think Ketlin Vieira has been one of the #1 recipients of the hashtag Stop Brazilian Hate campaign that I've been running. It's been a very profitable campaign. So I might have to stop Brazilian hate again this weekend. I haven't fully decided yet, but something I'm definitely thinking about. Next fight up, 185 pounds, the featured bout of the evening. We got Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. Very interesting fight here. Another Extreme Couture representative, Punahele Soriano. Roman Kopylov has responded well to some early UFC adversity. Started off his career with an absolutely abysmal performance, truth be told, against Carl Roberson, right, where he was getting outstruck, and then he was eventually submitted in that fight. Looked lost in many of the exchanges. Not a good sign. Carl Roberson, probably sub-UFC level at this stage. I'm not sure that he's still with the company. Either way, what I don't like about Roman Kopylov is that he appears to have a really underdeveloped ground game for the UFC level. Against Albert Duraev was getting overconfident. He was very cocky. I remember this fight extremely well because I had so many coins on Albert Duraev. And guys, I was scared. I was very scared that he was going to lose that fight because he was getting his face rocked around a little bit, and he had extremely bad swelling over his eye. So Kopylov can obviously do some damage with his strikes, but that was more of an arrogance problem from Duraev that has bit him multiple times now in the UFC. He got beat by Buckley as a result of that arrogance as well. So I think that when you look at, a fight like this, Kopylov, he had the benefit of fighting somebody in Alessio Di Chirico, who's not the most dangerous guy in the world, doesn't secure many knockout wins, not a very prolific finisher in the UFC, fought to a lot of close decisions, and he went out there and he was able to outlast him and beat him up on the feet and defend most of the takedowns and find the win. That's kind of what he's always been good at. He was good at that before he came to the UFC. Outlast somebody, land more shots, eventually break him down in the third round with volume and more accumulation. In this fight, Punahele Soriano, he's not throwing for accumulation, my brother. He is throwing for detonation. He is throwing for elimination. He is throwing for I don't even know what he's throwing for. He's throwing for domination. He's throwing for obliteration. The guy's throwing bombs. And I would not want to be on the receiving end of a Punahele Soriano strike, I'll tell you that. The guy's also very durable from everything we've seen. He took probably, 25 unobstructed body kicks from Brendan Allen, just went, that sucked. All right, move forward, and just kept throwing. Was it the greatest performance? No. Was it a learning experience and a toughening up? Yes. I think that for Punahele Soriano, it was about getting back out there and getting some experience. This guy should have a wrestling and grappling advantage that's very clear in this fight if he chooses to use it. If he chooses to stand on the feet, I don't think Kopylov is taking him down, right? So it's going to be his choice where this fight takes place, in my opinion. That definitely favors Punahele Soriano. And then on the feet, the guy throws very heavy hands. He does not have the greatest cardio in the world, I will admit. That is where it becomes interesting matchmaking. But in the early going, I think this is going to be one-way traffic. I think if you have Punahele Soriano at pre-fight lines, you could probably arb off after round one, after he wins round one, which I expect him to do at a pretty decent clip. I think this guy could throw heavy hands. I think he could throw good kicks, and I think he could take the guy down anytime he wants to. For me, that screams more like, a big favorite than a small favorite here. So interested to hear what you think of this one, Tim. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kopylov is a guy that I like to bet against in general. Anytime you get the grappling and jiu-jitsu being as bad, if somebody can get him to the ground, it's pretty much the Carl Robeson submission. I know it's the only time that he's been subbed. I get it, but it's just like, it was just such a terrible look. What he was just freaking out, didn't know what the fuck he was doing on the ground. He has improved. He did make improvements against Duraev. I lost a bunch of coin on him by sub because I thought that he would like insta sub and once he got on the ground. So I don't think it's going to be anything like that. But like you're saying, there's just way more paths for Soriano. There are red flags on his game too. I mean, like losing striking battle to Brendan Allen was pretty bad. He just didn't know what to do, and he was just searching for the big shot and pretty much just getting jabbed up the whole fight. So that wasn't a good look for him. But I agree. I think that there's just, when you have a fighter that's got more power, has more finishing potential, going to win more moments because of that, clearly has the wrestling, and definitely has a jiu-jitsu advantage as well. It's like, yeah, minus 150 seems at least right. But both of these guys, I historically do not like betting on money line wise, and I don't really find to be very reliable fighters. But yeah, I would pick Puna to probably knock him out in either round one or round two.
Yeah, what's also interesting to me, and was standing out here a little bit, is I'm looking. And Brendan Allen was an orthodox fighter. This is going to be a southpaw and southpaw matchup. And for Punahele Soriano, man, a lot of that power resides in that left hand. The hand that he keeps back. He uses that right hook to corral people, and then the left hand to crash in behind it and really, find that kill shot. And that for me is going to be a little bit more beneficial here. In this kind of matchup. The closed stance was what was allowing Brendan Allen to just get free body kick every time he wanted to, whereas they both have the same striking opportunities in this fight, in the southpaw and southpaw matchup. So it'd be interesting to see if Kopylov tries to switch stances, emulate some of those Brendan Allen techniques, but oftentimes he's an operator that likes to use his hands, likes to use uppercuts, likes to use hooks. He's not throwing a tremendous amount of kicks when he does, probably going to the legs more often than anything. So those are a couple of things to look out for in that fight. But I think we can move along to the co-main event of the evening, and it should be a good one. Before we do, just want to mention real quick, guys, this show, everything I do, brought to you guys by PrizePicks. It's the simplest game in DFS. If you guys have not tried it, they've got all the odds already up for the UFC, takedowns, fantasy score, fight time, significant strikes. Abdul Razak Al Hassan at 33 or 36 or something, significant strikes. It's gone down like 10 strikes or something since it opened. So if you want to try and middle that, get on the other side, whatever you want to do, over, under, that's a good way to get involved, and it's an easy way to support the show. So if you've never tried it out before and it's legal in your jurisdiction, use promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100, and all the information you need is in that description box below. But without further ado, at 145 pounds, the co-main event of the evening, Dan 50K Ige back, and he's not in a main event. He's in a co-main event here, taking on Damon the Leech Jackson. And this is an interesting one, guys, because, there's something to be said about, timing in MMA. And this is probably, for me, the time to invest in Dan Ige, because he's taking a step down in competition here. And that's no disrespect to Damon Jackson. He's a very talented fighter, and he's got clear paths to victory against most guys in the UFC. He can lean on you. He could grab a hold of you. He's long. He's lanky. He's kind of tricky. He's awkward. He can transition in the grappling. And he's an ornery prick. He's not easy to get out of there. He's a very tough guy. But with all that being said, is he a plus level athlete? I wouldn't say necessarily a plus level athlete at the UFC level. On the other hand, Dan Ige, he's kind of like this short ball of muscle, He's got a lot of explosivity. He's got good scrambling. And I think he's pretty hard to get a hold of unless you're a really, really talented wrestler that can hold on to somebody for the full allotted amount of time. Chan Sung Jung is an extremely talented ground player. I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for how good he is on the ground. Submitted very talented fighters at 145 pounds like Dustin Poirier and these guys. So Chan Sung Jung is the real deal. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he can get down. He could wrestle. And in that fight, he said, the reason I started wrestling and grappling and all these things is because Dan Ige is the hardest hitter I've ever faced, and for all the guys that he's fought in his illustrious career, it's quite an honor for somebody like Dan Ige. And I've seen this power. It's cost me money. I thought that Gavin Tucker was going to have something for him. Another guy who wasn't a plus athlete, who's very sophisticated. He's very talented. He's gritty. He's durable. He goes for the takedowns and whatever. And what happened? Dan Ige absolutely blasted him off the face of the earth before the fight even got started. It's one of the quickest losses I've ever had betting on MMA. So when I tell you that this guy, Dan Ige, really packs a punch, he really packs a punch. And when I also tell you he's very clever, I've seen things throughout his fights that have told me Dan Ige is a really sophisticated operator. He got hurt to the body against Edson Barbosa, and he guard pulled in the second round, was able to come back, get a split decision victory there instead of getting finished. A lot of guys would have got finished in that spot because they would have showed Barbosa, I'm hurt to the body, and then he would have followed up. But instead, Ige went, oh, I'm hurt to the body, grab a hold of the clinch, fall back with this guy. The guy is thinking about what he's doing out there, and he's trying to implement game plans. He won a round against Calvin Kattar. It's not like he's going out there and getting blanked against these elite level fighters. Josh Emmett, there's an argument that he won that fight. He went out there and made it extremely competitive. That guy's fighting for the interim title. So now you're saying that a guy who got what ultimately I would say amounts to a somewhat surprising, to be generous, first round knockout of Pat Sabatini that very few people saw coming. Right? Nobody was out there touting, Damon Jackson's going to knock this guy out in the first round. He's going to ice him with a head kick. I don't think many people were touting that before the fight. So then, if you think Damon Jackson's the next guy up, he's had a couple step up in opportunity in the UFC, fought some tough guys, fallen on some grenades. This is a big, big fight here. And Dan Ige used to 5-round fights. Used to fighting top 10 guys in the division. Damon Jackson's been fighting those guys who are on the outside looking in, looking for big opportunities. Now he's fighting a guy who's had those opportunities, and he's going to fight tooth and nail to keep them. I think Dan Ige is the wrong guy to piss off this weekend. I think he's going to be coming with bad intentions, and I think he's got the better cardio of these two guys. So I think from round one till the close, Dan Ige is live to put out his lights with a huge shot, and that's what I'm ultimately expecting here. Dan Ige is probably going to find the finish at some point. So that's what I like here. What do you think about that, Tim? Am I crazy? Am I out to lunch?
No, I don't. I think that this is a fight that's it's kind of binary. I think that if Damon has success with his takedowns, that he's going to have a ton of success in the fight, and if he doesn't, I think he's kind of fucked on the feet. His striking is very awkward. I know he caught the kick last fight, but his striking is very awkward, and just the striking process from Ige and the power is just so much better. The height difference is obviously 4 inches, but they have the same reach. So he's got kind of those ape arms for Ige. The one thing that interests me with this fight is it always, I'm new to this game over the last couple of years and been trying to learn from the best like yourself and a lot of these other cappers. And there's a certain archetype fight that I've made the most money off and bet a lot, like made my biggest bets on. And it's been like this exact situation. It's just recency bias where you're just like, okay, we're betting on stocks and we're betting on stocks and these fighters and we're betting numbers. And you're paying for Jackson right now the highest that you could possibly pay. I mean, he opened as a minus 160 favorite against this guy. And it's like, what would Dan Ige do to the last 4 fighters that Damon Jackson fought? He would fucking murder these guys. And just like you said, the people that Ige fought for Jackson is like, I don't think there's one that I would be confident that he wouldn't get finished by. Like, so I just feel like it's a clear, like you're buying super, super low on a fighter and you're buying really, really high on a fighter. And if you're trying to make that decision long-term, then you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So it's a pretty easy game. Like you need to be buying low all the time. And this is the clear buy low spot, similar to, I'm not saying matchup wise similar, but similar to the Dan Hooker match last year against Playas, where you're like, fucking, you're buying so high on Playas and you're buying so low on Hooker. And it's like, I don't think it's the same level. I think there's a completely different level to those fighters as to these fighters. So I'm not making that comparison, but it is just the same comparison of recency bias. And we're trying to buy these guys as a low as we possibly can. So I think that that's a clear Ige. That being said, I mean, I don't think that it's like the Ige's, the side for Ige that scares the shit out of me is the takedown defense and his ability just to get out of bad positions on the ground against a lot of these guys is not good. So I do think that it's going to be harder for Jackson to get into those positions than other fighters, and I think the other fighters have been more skilled against Ige to do that. So that's where I'm kind of like a little bit on the fence. So if Damon does have success getting him down and does have success getting close enough to him, then this fight gets very, very interesting. But I'm on the same side as you. I do feel like Ige is a very tough matchup for him, and if he doesn't get in on him, he's going to get caught. And if he does, as the fight gets going and as the fight extends, these takedowns are going to get harder and harder, and it's just like you said, from minute 1 to minute 15, Ige is going to be on him and potentially have the power to knock him out at any point. So I'm probably going to get to an Ige bet at some point, but I haven't done it yet. But I feel like he's the side. I feel like that's the clear value side at this point, and I'll probably take a shot on him by KO when I do it as well.
I feel like people aren't remembering, Tim, the fight that was taking place between Damon Jackson and Charles Rosa, where Charles Rosa, guys, was a few good decisions, which he's physically incapable of making them in the octagon. But when he is in the octagon, if he had made a couple of good decisions, just a few, Charles Rosa wins that fight. The truth is, because he had busted him up. He had cut his face extremely badly. I think it was from a clash of heads, whatever it is. It's a dirty fighting business, right? Damon Jackson's the one bleeding pints of blood all over the place. And Charles Rosa is going for guillotines. You can't help certain people, right? Some people just don't want to win fights. They're there to lose. But I don't think that that's what we're going to see here from Dan Ige. He's a mean guy. He's going to try and punch him in the head as hard as he can. If he sees blood, he's going to try and hurt him even worse. He's going to try and hit him to that big, long torso of his that got lit up a little bit with the body punching from Topuria. So it's like Damon Jackson, we've seen other guys that want to go out there and throw heavy hands, tight boxing, absolutely land some big shots. So, I'm not hating on my man, Shady Beach Bum. He's riding with Damon Jackson. Listen, if you've been riding Damon Jackson every time out, you've been making money. So what am I going to say? I can't hate on that. But truth be told, I have in the past been looking to get on the Dan Ige train at a certain point. And I have in the past been looking to fade Damon Jackson on a number of occasions. Not a ton of occasions, but I have looked to fade him. I have not backed him a lot historically. I did actually have him a small play on him to win by sub against Topuria because at the time I was worried about Topuria gassing. I still have some questions about that as we move forward. But by God, if you can't last the first 2 rounds with this guy, Ilia Topuria, he's the scariest guy in those first 2 rounds that I can imagine at 145 right now. But Tim, with that being said, my man, we could close the book on the co-main event here and move along to the main event. And one of the frustrating things about what we do, Tim, as I'm sure you know, is we research fights that do not happen. They never happen, right? Like
or make bets on them.
Oh yeah, that too. But I didn't even get so much as the chance to make the bet. I couldn't let you get the chance. I couldn't get the chance to bet on Kelvin Gastelum or to bet on Nasruddin Imavov in that original booking because the booking was over by the time I finished my research, and that's brutal, my man. I did a lot of research on Kelvin Gastelum, so the next time he fights, any KG questions you guys got, hit me with those. But in this instance, man, I kind of just got put on the spot. I was on Clint's show, and he says, "Hey, man, I told him an hour before the show. I was like, dude, look at this. Complete nonsense. They just announced a new main event." So then we look, I'm trying to get a feel for it. I've only had a couple hours, and I told him the truth. I'm kind of leaning towards Sean Strickland. And the more time I've had to sit on this fight, the less and less I like it for Sean Strickland, because I just started doing research here and I didn't like what I was seeing. Now, here's what I mean. Sean Strickland absorbed 141 significant strikes in his last outing against Jared Cannonier. Number one, that's a career high for Jared Cannonier. Credit where it's due. At his age, most guys will not be able to follow through when they say, I'm going to make a huge improvement. And Jared Cannonier said, I'm going to make a huge improvement to my game, and I am going to come out with more volume. And he landed basically every time he wanted to against Sean Strickland. He got off on a lot of volume. He landed a lot of big, heavy strikes, impactful shots, 1-2s down the middle. The left hook has been a laser-guided missile to Sean Strickland's chin throughout his UFC career. You know, it's been a problem for a very long time. He's been lit up by people that throw with that lead left hand, and he's had a difficult time adapting his game to deal with that. He's got a very unorthodox style, but the way he holds his hands is super effective against some guys that are a little bit more tepid and a little bit more predictable when they're going to jab and things like that. You know, if you allow Sean Strickland to intercept you, he becomes the most frustrating guy in the world to fight, because he'll just continue to bop down your jab, and he throws more shots than you. So that's how Sean Strickland wins his fights. If he can parry your jab and throw back the 1-2, get off with that kick to the body, get off on an occasional front kick to the face. Truth be told, I went back and watched Sean's film. His career best performances are when he first got to the UFC and that fight against Brendan Allen. Other than that, he constantly fights below your expectation for his skill level. And he's not a great decision maker. He has shown you time and time again, I am not going to fight to an optimal game plan. I am not going to do things that benefit me. I am not going to manage my career like a prize fighter. So when you think about, you know, what would most guys' managers say if they just lost a very close fight, you know, but it was admittedly a close but clear fight, let's say, to Jared Cannonier, where Strickland says, I got robbed by the judges, right? But in that case, you've got a close but clear decision against a former title challenger that goes against you. You've got knocked out by the champion. You should be trying to hold out for, you know, a top 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 type fighter that's ascending, and get some time and get some preparation and get a training camp. Maybe you get it in another main event. Maybe you get it in this kind of setting. For me, one of the things that's interesting here is just that Strickland has tended to struggle under the lights. You know, I feel like in some of these bigger fights and some of these bigger main event type opportunities, in the step ups in competition, in the fights that matter for contendership, he falls short. It's in the other fights that there's no pressure that he wins. And so that's what makes it at least interesting here for me on the Strickland side. That's what could win him this fight. What else could win him this fight? The fact that he's got 5-round experience. He's proven that he could go the full 25 minutes and throw 150 significant strikes. You know, we've seen Nascimento Imavov top out at 68 significant strikes so far in a UFC bout. That was his first UFC fight. Haven't seen it since. And we've seen him mix in the wrestling, the grappling, bail himself out with some takedowns. Say what you will about Sean Strickland. He hasn't been very easy to out-wrestle and out-grapple historically in the UFC. Very few guys have attempted it, and the guys that have, very few have succeeded, especially for long periods of time. The guys that did, Kamaru Usman, championship-level fighters. But Strickland's just a liability in terms of his stand-up defense. And when you're fighting somebody like Nasruddin Imavov, you know, I think if you're just a pure analytics person, you might miss, you know, he doesn't have any recorded knockdowns in the UFC. But then you watch the fight with Heinisch. He absolutely butchered his face, and then he did drop him with a knee. I don't know why he wasn't credited with a knockdown in that fight. He dropped him with the knee, followed up with the shots on the ground. And then you see in some of the other fights, right? It's ironic. If you have bet on the method of victory props for Imavov, you could have been profitable betting on him to win by decision, and you could have been profitable betting on him to win by knockout, because he has cashed at big plus money numbers a number of times. And he's been an underdog in several of these UFC fights. And I think that that's what we're starting to see, you know, reverse in this case. So plus 145 were the opening odds for Strickland here, briefly flipped to a pick'em and a slight favorite. And now we've got Imavov money starting to come back in as these limits get even higher. It's starting to go back the way of Imavov as the favorite here on the money line. So really fascinating main event here, Tim. I'm curious, what is your analysis? What do you think is going to happen in the first main event of 2023?
Yeah, I think that the thing that scares the shit out of me is obviously what the fuck is Sean doing in this situation? Like, who fights 4 weeks after they had 5 rounds against Jared Cannonier? It's not like he didn't just get hit by a tree trunk like 100 times. So I don't get it. Like, the dude kicked the shit out of his leg. He hit him multiple times, like 50 times in the head at least, and he hits like a truck. So that's like the part to me where it scares the shit out of me if I were backing Strickland. Like, if you said like everybody, like full camp, I'd be betting Strickland in this situation. No question about it. Like, I'd say same line, they're baking this into the line clearly. So there's the cardio on Imavov scares me. In round 3, he was looking at the clock against Buckley multiple times. He's shown in multiple fights that by the time he gets to the 3rd round, he's not the same fighter as he is in the early parts of the fight. That against Strickland, as this is another one of those fights where I'm going to be betting live, very like just guaranteed. I'll be watching the first 5 minutes or so, watching the 2nd round, and then after 10 minutes, like, I'll have a pretty good idea of, what I think is going to be happening. Probably after the 1st round, I'll have a good idea as to what I think I'm going to want to attack. But as round 3, 4, 5 starts going, if it's flipping at all in the end of round 2 and Sean's having some success, or he's showing early that there's no effects on what he's doing, then I might take a shot at him at that point. Like you're saying, I don't know what the technique is called, but like the double-fisted cocksuck thing that he does defensively striking, like, it's not a great look, and it doesn't really work either. But yeah, I don't get it from a technical standpoint. So somebody will give me a name of what that actually is, but I'm just going to come up with that as my defense for it. But yeah, I think it's the only bet that I'll have pre-fight on this fight will be fight ends in split decision, because it's a stupid line. It's like plus 650 on DK. And that to me just doesn't make any sense for Strickland fights, because I don't think it's like, sure, is it possible that he gets KO'd? Yeah, is it possible that I think Imavov's KO potential is probably higher than Strickland's, especially the last few fights that Strickland has fought. He just hasn't shown really any finishing initiative whatsoever. So
you have to have the desire to finish the fight in order to finish the fight, and he does not want to finish the fight.
It's been a passion of mine to lose late round money props on him. Like, I lose a lot every time. I'll bet like, oh, it's going to be attritional. He'll take care of it, and he just fucking soft cocks his way to the decisions. So yeah, I mean, just volume versus some moments, and maybe the earlier success in the fight versus the later success in the fight. This kind of screams split decision to me, and his fights usually do in general. So I bet the last time against Cannonier that fight would go split. So as you know, it's kind of what I really love this prop in general, especially when it's a fight that there's not going to be a lot of grappling in, and you're going to get 2 guys that are going to have different styles with their striking. So yeah, give me a split decision prop at plus 650. I mean, this is like I was saying earlier, like this being plus 650 and Umar and Rowney being plus 400 on split is it's totally asinine. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
I actually, when I first started thinking about this fight, right, I mentioned Imavov to win by decision has been a profitable angle. His fights going over, his fights going to decision, all those have been profitable if you bet those. I think the over has been plus money a number of occasions for Imavov fights and have cashed. So that's all very interesting to me. But then when I just think about the dynamic of this matchup, I feel like Strickland might almost be forced to finish him here if the fight gets extended to the 5th round. We haven't seen Imavov go these 5 rounds. We don't know that he could do it. Especially at this level, with this level of resistance. The other thing is, though, guys, if you rewatch Sean Strickland's fights, and I did, he's mostly going for takedowns off caught kicks. So if you don't throw a lot of kicks, and if you don't give him a lot of opportunities to catch the kicks, he doesn't really go for takedowns at a very high rate. It's just not something he's prioritizing. At least it hasn't been in his recent bouts that I've seen. And when he did, he wasn't able to out physical Jared Cannonier. So he didn't even attempt it. After a certain point, he kind of just got to a few positions and then left it alone. But I have a weird feeling here that in the early going, Imavov is very live to win this fight by finish. He's a big hitter. He throws with a lot of power. He throws with a lot of bad intention. I think people forget that he almost finished Buckley in that fight. And that's kind of why he gassed out a little bit, looking for the finish, trying to get a little overzealous there. He's in front of his home crowd, a lot of pressure to perform in that stage. And I thought that what I took away was in the third round when he started to look a little bit gassed. He took a big knee to the face and just no-sold it and kept coming forward and kept throwing. He seems very tough. He seems very durable. And he does seem like he's got pretty good power. He didn't have the greatest finishing instincts. I think that's something he's going to continue to improve. I think that's something he's got to continue to work on. But we've also seen Strickland knocked out twice in the first round in the UFC, including 2 fights ago. And then the interim, right? So between him getting knocked out by Alex Pereira, he absorbed 141 strikes from a guy nicknamed the Killer Gorilla. And now he's supposed to turn around in 1 month. By the way, no breaks. Went back to sparring right away. So goes from the fight to the sparring room, no break for your brain, 4 weeks of sparring, and back here to do it all again. I don't know, guys. It seems like they found cheap labor to replace Kelvin Gastelum that's in the neighborhood on short notice, and he doesn't give a damn about his career. He makes that clear by getting banned on social media, by saying completely ridiculous shit, and by taking fights on 1 month's notice when, he just got in a fight where he absorbed 141 significant strikes. So I am not saying that Sean can't win the fight. Obviously he can, but everybody seems really bullish on him here because he just went through that war with Jared and came out the other side and he looked good and he almost won. But timing is everything in MMA. He did that fight 4 weeks ago, guys. It was December 17th or something. I don't really see that as being beneficial for your career. How many good fighters have we seen, take a quick turnaround and we thought, oh, this is going to be easy. It's an easy style. It's an easy matchup. And then they have 7.5 minutes of gas for the first time in their career. And you're like, what's happening? Overtraining is real. Fighting too often is real. And people will come out and give performances you're not, used to seeing. So one thing I will mention here, for whatever it's worth, when I first started thinking about the fight, I thought it was Strickland. After I gave it more thought, I had to come around to the Imavov side. I don't think he should be a huge favorite. I think the fight on the money line is probably pretty close to accurate. Just because I think the later the fight goes, the more Strickland has a chance to get back into it. I think if Strickland was smart, if he didn't nickname himself something like Stupid Sean, then he would probably attempt grappling early and often here to gas out Imavov. Because the other thing is, does Imavov gas in a 5-round stand-up fight contested with mostly light jabs from Sean Strickland? I don't know about that. Whereas if Sean Strickland comes out with the same furiosity and intensity that he did against Brendan Allen, maybe it's a whole different story. But I haven't seen that from Sean. He got knocked out. I thought it was a pretty soft performance against Jared. I thought at times when he hurt Jared, by his own words, he did not step on the gas at all. Scary for me. He's supposed to now go back in there on quick turnaround against a guy who's 3-4 years younger, who's a little bit fresher, who doesn't have as much tape out there on how to study his game and beat it. He's got a decent front headlock series, seems to have a good sprawl in that Joaquin Buckley fight. I just have a weird feeling that Nasruddin Imavov is much better prepared for this fight, this opportunity, this date, this night. So is Sean Strickland more skilled overall in MMA? Yeah, he probably is. Is this a good setup for his career? I don't think so. I think this is a bad setup. And I did take some Imavov by KO at plus 400 earlier today. I always let people know in the lab VIP first. That's the way that I operate. So if you guys are interested, that information as well is in the description box below. The line has now dropped to plus 350, best available that I'm seeing for Imavov to win the fight by KO. Think that that's a little bit more appropriate. Some of these sharper markets are even lower, plus 325, plus 250 in some places on Imavov to win the fight by KO. One thing I thought was weird and a little bit telling, the fight to end by knockout, plus 125, plus 120, plus 150 was the highest that I saw it. And that's for either one of these guys to win the fight by knockout. So the books are expecting that these guys could definitely win this fight by knockout, that it's very live. And so when I look at a fight not to go the distance, opening at minus 140 on Bet Online, when it's opening minus 120 and minus 110 in some of these other shops, and then they're racing to get ahead of Bet Online, I think to myself, maybe this fight's not going the distance. And you got one guy on short notice coming in, eating pizza and a little bit overweight. So more weight on the bones, more heavy leather that they could be throwing around. I think that either one of these guys could find the finish, but I have to lean slightly towards Nasruddin Imavov, the French-Russian sniper, to get the job done here. So this should be a good one, my man. I'm really looking forward to the card.
I'm looking at these goddamn props, and like the Tobias character. What is that show with Jason Bateman? You know the one I'm talking about? Where
I'm not sure. I'm a cultural Luddite. I know nothing.
All right, there's a TV show, and this guy's like talking about like this thing never fucking works, and these guys are so insane, and he's like, but it might work for me, and then he comes back, and this is what I'm doing with the whole. I keep losing money, like hemorrhaging money on late round props on Sean Strickland, like I was saying earlier, and now I'm looking at the 21 round KO 3 21-1. KO 4 30-1, KO 5 35-1. Like, I'm gonna burn money on this motherfucker again. I know I am, and it's like, god damn it, Sean Strickland. But he's my guy. Why not?
Dude, I like Sean Strickland well enough, man. I think he's a good fighter. I think he does himself no favors. That's my problem with Sean Strickland. If he tried to take the path of least resistance ever, I would back him in more of these fights, but after that Jared Cannonier fight as well, where I thought we would see him try and lean into that wrestling, that grappling, where he should have an advantage, he wasn't able to do so there. The physicality gave him problems, and he basically just gave up on it really easily. And his corner was calling for it. They wanted more of it, and he just refused to give it to them. I think when you look at a lot of the extreme couture athletes, a lot of them fit the brand a lot better than Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland, basically a man without a home. No one wants to train with the guy because he's a complete loon. And I think that eventually that's going to cause him. I mean, obviously he's working with Marvin and these guys, but just like, I think that what he does and says publicly is a detriment to his career, and the career decisions I'm seeing, not very productive. So overall, I just hate this fight for him. I don't like it on this quick turnaround. I don't like that the bookmakers are, rapidly dropping the line on the KO. And we have seen, is Sean Strickland, when faced with a power puncher or faced with somebody that could hurt him on the feet, going to take the path of least resistance? No. That's what we've seen. Maybe he bucks that trend, but just if the past is precedent, he's not going to do that. So do you want to just back somebody who's going to go out there and fight to their opponent's strength for as long as the fight lasts? That for me is what I can't get behind here. I understand people taking the plunge at the big plus money, but again, short notice is everything here for me.
Yeah, as well as he's not like one hitter quitter power. Like he's not a super like, oh dude, he's major danger right now. Like this. That's where the other problem with betting him is like he's the low fight IQ, doesn't fight his fights to his opponent's strengths, and he's going to be most of his decision equity is winning his decision equity. It's like, what the fuck is this, dude? I'm not taking winning equity on decisions only, and the guy doesn't finish anybody, doesn't take down anybody. It's like, dude, what am I betting on at that point? I'm betting on late round props again. That
carried Uriah Hall, right? Like he carried Uriah Hall to the finish there. Like could have looked for a finish there, didn't attempt to.
Who was the guy that he was yelling at like midway through the third round? Marshman. Come on, Marshman. Fucking let's go for it. Like, I mean, that's the kind of shit you're gonna get with him. So it's kind of tough. I do have my t-shirt. I will be sporting my Sean Strickland t-shirt this week, but goddamn.
I mean, it'd be nice for him to bounce back, get a win, but if you guys have been watching the show for a long time, I have circled 3 middleweights that I like as potential up-and-comers that I've been trying to look for opportunities on. Nasruddin Imavov, Andre Muniz, Dricus Du Plessis. I freaking faded my own boy, and Dricus Du Plessis was stupid Darren Till. Worst decision I've ever made. I let the masses brainwash me into thinking that Darren Till didn't have the worst takedown defense in the history of the top 15, which is true. That's a factual, literal, historical statement. And I don't know if it's true by the stats. I know it by the eye test. I've watched wrestling. That's the worst wrestler I've ever seen. Now, moving back to what we're dealing with here. Sean Strickland, a guy that I think has a lot of the right qualities to be great, and I just don't think he puts it all together right. I don't think he puts it all together on fight night. Bisping's talked about it before. He's like, if you guys saw the same guy that I see in the training room, then you'd believe that he could be a world champion. He's like, but he's yet to really crack that in the octagon. I still don't think he's gotten it. And stepping back into another main event opportunity where he has historically underperformed in main and co-main events, in big fights and big opportunities, I don't love it, man. So he's beaten, the Uriah Halls and these kind of guys in the division, but I feel like those guys are a little bit more one note and a little bit less physically imposing and hungry for championships and title opportunities. And I think that's what you're getting from Imavov, main training partner of one Cyril Gane, who's calling out John Jones. So very serious work being done over there at the MMA factory when they're not dealing with death threats from Ali Abdelaziz. Heyo, not me, Ali. I didn't say nothing. I just heard it through the grapevine. But just wanted to address some questions from the chat. But I also wanted to give my man Tim a chance to plug anything that you got, my brother. Let the people know where they can find you. And I know it's very late, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to cut loose, my brother.
Yeah, dude, we've been trying to get on one of these together for a while now. So thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it, and this has been great. Yeah, I'm on Narco Cops Lambo Plays tomorrow night. I co-host with him on that, and then Sean Orr and I will do a Twitter Spaces on Saturday before the fights, just to give our best bets and have some sharp guys come on and give their favorite plays for the day.
Hell yeah, man. I know that I will be dropping by for the Spaces on Saturday, and I'm always watching for those Lambo plays. I don't want to miss my chance to ride off with them keys. You know what I'm saying, Tim? So always appreciate the contributions, brother. Analysis on point. King of the split decision, Tim Troiano, brother. Thank you so much for being here, my man.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, folks, I did not want to keep my man Tim around any longer. It's already 3:30 local time, so wanted to cut him loose, but saw some questions in the chat. I did have my power source all the way turned up to 10 today on the show. Got the coffee pot brewing. So any questions that you guys have about the card, about the current situation in MMA betting, about MMA Twitter drama and all that bullshit, whatever you guys want to ask about, now is the time. I've got some time on my hands here, so please consider it an open forum. Any questions you guys got, fire away. First and foremost, I'm going to fire with my man George. Thoughts on the latest Krause news, that Molina screenshot. So let me pull up the Jeff Molina screenshot so I'm not speaking out of turn for you folks here. And here we go, ESPN.com. Sources, suspended coach. So I'm looking for the screenshot. I want to get the quote right here and do it some justice. Well, either way, guys, I can't find the exact quote offhand. If anybody has it, please, by all means, send it to me. Send me a link. I'd be happy to read it out live on the show. But I'm just going to give you guys a summary of my thoughts because I've kind of held my tongue on the James Krause situation for a while because I wanted to let some more of the facts come to light. I wanted to, make sure I came with a base of knowledge. I'll tell you what, I have been skeptical of James Krause from the very outset. I thought that it was at the very least extremely unethical that he was basically dealing inside information. And that was, obvious to outsiders. You didn't have to be a sophisticated observer to really put together that James Krause was trading in inside information from the very outset. He's a coach. He has unique access to the facilities, to the fighters, to the camps, to fellow corners, to other coaches and other, connections that he has in the game. Anybody on his coaching tree, anybody from his mentorship, anybody that's passed through his gym could be a source of inside information about other fighters, other camps. And there's a lot of this that is just natural to betting, the information business. But then there's so many things that were clear and obvious and not above board. For example, James Krause taking over people's betting accounts. Guys, if you have ever signed up for a legal sports betting account of any kind, you know how obviously illegal that is. You have to sign all the things. No, I will not let anybody else use my account. No, I am not a casino card holder or key holder or whatever the heck all the things say. So as far as this James Krause situation goes, I will tell you, number one, I believe they are guilty of, at the very least, unethical behavior and giving the appearance of impropriety. I have a background in public opinion research, as well as in political campaigns, very small level school boards and things like this, right? Not a man who's destined for that career. But what I'll tell you is, when I look at this situation, the appearance of impropriety is just as bad as impropriety itself, because it taints the image, it taints the reputation of what we do, right? We bet on fights. So we want to have fair fights, fights that are adjudicated with information that we all know going in, what the tape looks like, how old they are, what their reach is. We all have the same common information, and then we go bet on the contests and hope for the best. And some go our way, some go the other way. That's the nature of the beast. Nobody has any problem with that. But what happens if you know going in as a coach, as an insider, that this fighter has a 0% chance to win? I believe in the case of Darrick Minner against Shayilan Nuerdanbeki. Darrick Minner had a 0% chance to win, guys. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. His knee was hurt, and it was never going to happen. He threw 2 kicks with the injured knee, hurt himself worse intentionally, and then bowed out of the contest. I would be stunned if James Krause did not know in advance that that fight was going to end by knockout in the first round. I'm not going to go much further than that because I don't want to be sued for defamation. I'm just a guy with an opinion on the internet. But what I'll tell you is, if that's not fight fixing, I'm not really sure what is. I think James Krause knew that there was a, quote, 0% chance that Darrick Minner was going to win the fight. And he told people. I'm pretty sure that's why there's the FBI investigation going on. So at the end of the day, when there was gambling banned in certain jurisdictions, I was not surprised, because that is the exact concept I'm talking about. The appearance of impropriety will lead to regulators, will lead to people that are supposed to enforce rules and laws and fairness and integrity in gaming. They'll say, we don't know if your contests are being fairly adjudicated because the UFC had James Krause on their Fight Pass network doing shows, and he's talking about the bets, and he's talking about what he's putting his money on and whatever. He's talking about openly betting on his fighters that are in the cage, betting on fight outcomes for fighters that he's coaching, cornering. That's not a conflict of interest. And it took all these things going sideways. It took investigations and people being pulled aside, and the UFC eventually saying, please, no more gambling, folks. It took a long time for all that to happen. It took a long time for things to get sorted. It took a long time for people to start asking the obvious questions about why he was allowed to get away with it for so long. So I think the whole industry has to do some soul searching over that, because to be honest, it's just a terrible look for the industry when, the appearance of impropriety is taking place on the pinnacle of the sport, the highest level, the best fighters. And we've got this guy who is given premier access, premier opportunities, premier positions, premier placement, excellent platforms. And now, we're also supposed to just forget it ever happened, move on, just, let the investigation take its course. It's like, no, people were wronged. Also, people lost money betting onto fights that they had a 0% chance of winning. And that ain't right. And, I just have to say, I thought it was coming for a long time. I'm glad that it's being aired out now. I'm glad it's being investigated. And I hope that people continue to, keep a watchful eye and keep your skeptical hippo ears, as Brendan Schaub would say, to the ground. Because you don't want to just take the company line for everything. Look at what's going on in the UFC right now with the whitewashing of the Dana White ironically, the whitewashing of the Dana White slap incident and all these other things. If you get your source material directly from the UFC every time, guys, you're just not going to know the truth about this industry. You're not going to know about all the goings on. And there's a lot of goings on that the UFC does not like to talk about. And there's some bad characters around this industry. So just glad that one of them seems to have been, leached out at this point. We could close the book on that. Next question. What fights are likely to end in violence? That's a great question. What fights are likely to end in violence? I kind of have a feeling the main event's going to end inside the distance one way or the other. Like I discussed with my man Tim, could see either one of those guys getting the finish. I feel like Dan Ige finds the finish, but Damon Jackson's path is probably to grit out a decision there, and or to find a submission. So that one a little bit trickier to say. I think Rebecki and Fiore is not going to the distance. I think that Rebecki is going to get that done inside the distance there. Basharat and Mendonca is probably going to end inside the distance. Mendonca is a pretty tough guy, but would also have to think that there's some grappling path. The sharp markets are very squared away on Basharat to win the fight by submission. So they're trying to cover themselves in that event. I think that lends itself towards this fight potentially not going to decision. But again, looking at a little bit lower weight classes, don't want to get ahead of ourselves there. I think that Nascimento Hernandez could end ITD. I could go to decision. Not fired up about that one. Johnson Flick, I think, is ending inside the distance more often than not. Flick, when he loses, he tends to get finished by knockout. Johnson's never been submitted before, but I do think that there's a first time for everything. Jimmy Flick's an extremely dangerous grappler. He's going to attack. He's going to try and be dangerous, opportunistic, but with 700 days of layoff from the cage, really hard to know what we're going to get there. And I also think the first women's fight is pretty good to not go the distance. When I'm just looking at the two women involved, Priscilla Cachoeira has some knockout equity, has some ability to finish, has been finished herself, has been submitted, has been knocked out. TKO'd I'm talking about on the ground. So I think that Priscilla Cachoeira, tough girl, definitely violent, willing to swing it out. Sajara Eubanks, definitely more technical, better fighter on the ground, but cardio liability. I feel like both those women have a good chance to finish. So, that would be my breakdown for what are the most violent fights. Quick thoughts on the big underdogs this week. Nick, Flick, Priscilla. Priscilla, I think, has a chance, but, probably a better live betting spot. Halfway through the first round, if she's getting completely dominated, you could try and bet it then and see what you could do. I think that Jimmy Flick probably better to play on a specific method prop, either the sub or the decision line. Don't really foresee him knocking out Charles Johnson. Watch me eat my words on that. I think Aguirre is also an interesting underdog potentially, just because Dan Argetta kind of stands out as like a sore thumb a little bit in terms of those big favorites. A lot of them make a little bit more sense to me than Dan Argetta in this spot. A little bit of two guys that we don't really know a ton about. So it just seems a little bit bullish from the market to price him a minus 600 here, like he's already won the fight. Now let's see if there's any other questions here. Wanted to shout out my man George. He did have the quote for us here. Melina on their Discord. In stocks, this is called insider trading. In MMA betting, it's called James Krause. Do yourself a favor and join the VIP. I mean, that's literally satire because oh my goodness. That's exactly how I've always described it. So it is insider betting, and it is not fair to the general player, especially people. Imagine you only think about this fighting ordeal from a fight perspective. You just think about who's going to win and who's going to lose. This is an information business, folks, and sometimes you have to read and observe the market and study what's going on and see why lines are moving the way they're moving and things like this, because when that line dropped $3 or $2 in the couple minutes leading up to the fight, in the hour and a half leading up to the fight, that's no accident. That didn't happen by mistake. And yes, I made a small donation on Darrick Minner because I hadn't checked all the market fundamentals. And when I saw what was happening, I said, oh, I made a donation. That money's gone. Thankfully, I got it back on the fight not to go the distance. I got it back on the under because I realized this fight is going to end early. I started looking at what was happening in the prop market as well as in the money line market. Not only was the line moving heavily, but the under was moving heavily. The fight not to go the distance was moving heavily. The fight to end in round 1 was moving. Every line that you could imagine was moving in the sharpest direction possible. I guess that was just a coincidence, right, James? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Any split decision. That's an interesting one, man. I'll tell you, I'm not the best for those split decision props. That's not really my bread and butter. In terms of prop betting, I'm pretty good at picking the submissions, but yeah, not as profitable historically betting decisions. I am profitable betting decisions, but again, not by a huge amount. So want to speak with some humility here, but fights that could end in a split decision. I think if Damon Jackson and Dan Ige hits the cards, I feel like there's a decent chance that could end up being a split decision, just because both those guys will be looking to get advantages in their positions. Danny Ige on the feet, Damon Jackson on the ground. Those are the kind of fights that can get scored, split. A lot of people are going to say Ketlin Vieira and Raquel Pennington and kind of have an unorthodox take on that fight. So you guys could check back and see if you're interested in my thoughts on that. Nascimento and Hernandez, I mean, those are two guys that both fight to split decisions. Historically, would not be surprised at all if we see those two guys get back into the split decision column. So those are a couple different split decision options for you. Sleepless, says Moyes Audio. Only intentionally, my brother. Wanted to make sure I got some content out for the people. My man Tim was available, had to make it happen. And also just wanted to make sure I talked about some of these topics that we've been, I promised everybody I was going to come on and discuss. Been dealing with some tech issues that thankfully we haven't dealt with again since the very beginning of the show. So yeah, just trying to keep it rolling, trying to get back on the content grind. Absolutely loving the fact that we got some fights back to talk about, but also going to be coming on talking about a bunch of different betting concepts, talking about, other sports as well with some of my lab VIP associates. And just looking to win money, do the damn thing, put in the work, do the research, and try and come out ahead. So we've got my man George says, Liam, you were one of the first to call out Krause while Dana was trying to sweep it under the rug. George, I truly appreciate you, my man. I agree. When a lot of people wanted to not use the word fight fixing, when they wanted to not use the word insider betting, I did try to tell you guys that I thought it was completely unethical, that I thought it was very obvious from the outset that there was something improper going on. And the fact that it took authority so long to move in, I think is a little bit, alarming, but I'm glad they did. Now, any other questions, guys? Because I am happy to hit them, but I am going to call this at 4:00. So we got 16 more minutes to rock out here. And any questions you guys got, I'm happy to answer. My man Dennis says, are you still competing at BJJ? How's it going? My man, I haven't had a competition here in a little while, but I'm excited to get back to it. I'm excited to get back to competing. Dealt with a little bit of a small injury, minor injury, a couple minor injuries, as a matter of fact, but I'm feeling a lot better today than I have in a little while. A little bit of a swelling around the eye, nothing serious though. So yeah, I feel great right now, and getting the right materials I need for extra support, for the knee a little bit. But man, I think overall, my jiu-jitsu's never felt better when I'm in the room rolling. So I think that I'm in a good spot, and I still love it, man. In terms of the journey, I just love getting after it. I enjoy competing. It's what, brings a smile to my face. Going to hit a Friday morning jiu-jitsu class here. Going to stay up through the night and go right to it. Get after some wrestling and some no-gi jiu-jitsu this morning at 7 a.m. with a bunch of killers. And that for me is fun, guys. That for me is therapeutic. It's a release. So always looking to get after it when I can. And jiu-jitsu, if you guys have never taken it up, It's a great hobby. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way to work on your problem solving physically and mentally. So I endorse it full-heartedly, and that's coming from a lifelong wrestler. I got the wrestler swag on today, but I'll tell you, jiu-jitsu is a marathon, whereas wrestling's a sprint. I think it's a little bit easier on the body, and it's fun. You can be creative and have fun. So I recommend it to anybody wholeheartedly. And Renzo Gracie of Warwick in New York, great gym, tremendous training. Dave Maver, elite world-class coach, brilliant jiu-jitsu. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be a part of the team. Any other questions that we have here? I want to shout out my man, Moise Audio. And, guys, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to talk about something that's been talked about too much. But I got to tell you, I have a piece on this. I have something I want to say. I have something I want to get off my chest. So, I'll put this in the timestamps for people that want to go back and listen to this. But I have some thoughts on the MMA lock of the night situation. Now, I was made aware of this a little bit before some of the public. And the reason being is one of my buddies on Twitter, and I'll just leave him nameless out of respect for him. I didn't get a chance to ask him if he wanted me to tell this story. But one of my buddies hit me up, one of the guys that was being stiffed by MMA Lock of the Night. If you guys have not heard of this story, I'll briefly bring you up to speed, but MMA Lock of the Night is a guy that I've been very friendly with. I've had him on my channel. This is why I'm going to talk about it as well. I feel like I have to. I'm obligated to. I've had him on my channel before. I've been on his channel on a number of occasions, and we have had a very good personal relationship. I was subscribed to the MMA tape index. I do this shit all the time. I'm constantly watching film, and I need, quick access to these guys' film. So I have since obviously, discarded my subscription to the tape index, but regardless, I was a member of the tape index. I would message Locke all the time and tell him like, hey man, this is some footage I found, put this up here. I just found this fight for this guy from Contender Series, if you want to add it to the tape index. So we were very cordial, very friendly. And I always, considered that we had a good relationship. And here's the other thing that I want to be very clear about. This is not the first time that this has happened to me personally, where somebody I met through the MMA betting space has turned out to be a crook, a con man, somebody that was taking money for one purpose and using it for a different purpose. And so I want to just give a public service announcement warning. If you do not know somebody personally that you could go visit them, say hello, shake their hand, be very, 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 very wary of sending them money over the internet, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm telling you that sending people money over the internet that you only have an internet relationship with can end very badly. Reason being, people are all over the world. It's a great big world out there. People aren't even always honest about where they are. People can lie, they can deceive. So you have to be on guard. When you're on the internet, people can pretend to be somebody that they're not. I'm just a guy. You can find my information out there, my name, everything. My name is attached to my betmma.tips, right? I'm a real person. I'm a real guy. I live in a real state, all these things. I'm just a guy. Nothing special about me. But I'm a real person. And I'm not a character, and I'm none of those things. I'm a guy that caps MMA. I'm a guy that does work. I work as a betting analyst for several sites, but my name is my reputation. I'm a real person. I have a real reputation in my community, where I would go back and coach kids in high school and these kind of things. Like, these things are important to me. My reputation matters to me. There are a lot of people on these online services that don't care, and they will take big risks with their real life reputation to get money, to get ahead, to find a leg up. And so I was reached out to in confidence by somebody that said, dude, I can't believe this, because I placed in this Lock of the Night contest, and he's been slow playing me on PayPal issues for months. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, are you serious? Like, you're saying the contest, the thing, because guys, by the way, want to talk about, I had a good relationship with it. I played the contest at one point. Now, granted, if you guys know anything about me, timing is not perfect for me, right? Sometimes I'll tell you I'll be here at 1 a.m. I get here at 1:15. I get here at 1:30. I try my best, but timing is not the best thing for me. I missed the deadline, I think, every week that I was in it. I was out of the competition, disqualified in like 3 weeks, right? I wasn't very good at it. Either way, I have literally donated money to these pots before. So I've been a member of the game. I've been in the Lock of the Night challenges. When somebody told me that they hadn't been paid out on it, I said that I thought that they should go public. And I thought that they should tell people what was happening. And the problem was, we're not talking about, comical sums of money. We're not talking about $50 and $20. And by the way, if that's what you're betting, I am not hating. I am not I'm not downplaying you at all. But what I'm talking about is financial, life-changing, like rent, utilities, how I'm going to eat this month, like real money that people need, lots of money that people expect to have when they win a game like this, when they play one of these things and they win. That means a lot to people. And so when they're in this delicate situation now of being slow pedaled and given, a little bit of information and a little bit of trust and a little bit of a nugget and nibble and whatever, something to keep stringing them along and giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because here's the other thing about con men, guys. And by the way, I don't just have experience with this in MMA betting, which, by the way, way too many con men per capita MMA betting. But anyways, just extending it out, I bought my first car from somebody who was indicted by the FBI for insurance fraud. Okay, right? I've had experience with con men. Do you know what they are? Very personable, very smiley, very nice. I consider myself a nice guy. I like to be smiley, whatever. Do you notice my tone has changed a little bit for this? Because I'm trying to be very, very real with you guys about the fact that there are people out there that are fucking scumbags, and they will try to rob you for your money because you're a nice guy, because you have the benefit of the doubt for people, because you want to give people grace. And so what happened is, two of the nicest people that I've ever met, two of the best people, two people that I've had extended conversations with, mostly through social media, I will grant. But my buddy Gordo, who you guys will probably all know, won the fucking contest and was not given the large sum of money he was owed immediately, which prompted this entire succession of events. It was all going off the rails, including the fact that he hadn't gotten his money. Now, why are we talking about it today? We're talking about it today because now the two guys that I felt most responsible for them getting their money back have, I believe, been made whole, both of them. What does that not mean? That does not mean that we're letting him off the hook. That does not mean that he does not owe money to other people, which I think he still does. And that does not mean that there can be a complete firsthand forgiveness of what has happened, because it was very drawn out and there was a lot of guilt tripping of people that were involved. I tried to tell people to go public with this earlier, but what was happening was they were fearing, and I'm talking about one person in particular, a friend, a good person that is not an extremely public voice in this community like a lot of people are, right? He's a little bit more low-key and private. And he had said, I want to make sure that I get paid out on this, so I don't want to cause a big public scene. And I totally respect that, by the way, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to get our money. That's what we're doing. We're all trying to win money. We're trying to get after it. And in this sense, I take anybody. If you come to me with private information and say, I can't have you sharing this anywhere, I try to honor his trust as a friend. But when it came down to it, I've sent Locke a very mean message, right? It was not very kind at all. And it basically said, it was a scumbag move. You stole from the nicest guys that we both fucking know collectively on Twitter. If you guys don't know Gordo Gambles, number one, he's a tremendous mind for the UFC. He's an insanely smart guy. He's very sharp. He's very good at DFS. He's all those things. But at the end of the day, I met him in person. I shook his hand. I've had conversations with him. I took in the fights in Columbus, Ohio with him. He's a great human being. He's a good guy. And he wasn't even a dick about it. He was as polite as somebody could be when you owe them that amount of money. And he was extremely polite about it. And it tells you the dichotomy that is out there. There are beautiful, wonderful, kind, like well-intentioned people that are trying to help you, that want to put you in a position, to succeed, that want to see you win, that want to be a part of your winning process. And there are people that just want to take advantage of whatever they can, whatever situation they can get involved in. And I just encourage you guys to be extremely discerning. Mike's MMA Picks, guy who's been around for a very long time, says trust verified third-party long-term results. I think that is sound advice. I would encourage you guys, audit somebody's record if you want to check into what they're doing. But if somebody is telling you something that's too good to be true, always look it extra hard. Do not move into anything where somebody is promising, safe, I'll hold on to your money, nothing's going to happen to it. Guys, trust but verify in this life. Let that be your lesson. Trust but verify in this life, because too many people gave the benefit of the doubt for too long, and somebody kept getting away with something. And that wasn't to their benefit. That wasn't to the benefit of anybody that played in these contests. That was to no one's benefit. So I'm not pitching you guys on any contest. I wish you guys well. If you guys want to continue to play the contest and all that stuff, it's not my bread and butter, but I wish you the best. There are legal regulated operators that you could play with if you like the fantasy end of it and those kind of things. I think bet openly is another way that people have been doing that. If you want to just bet with other players, find out what's legal in your state, find out, what you're comfortable with, but understand that strangers on the internet are not to be trusted with your funds unless they're offering you something tangible, unless they're offering you a service, unless they're offering you something. And truthfully, guys, just approach with some caution, especially these freaking contests. How many of these contests end in people crying and people saying, where's the money and all this shit? If there's long-term proven, above standing people with public reputations and public images, absolutely do whatever you want. Take your own risks. That's what we're all doing here. We're gambling, but understand that is a risk that you're taking when you're trusting another human being that you don't know, that you don't have a personal attachment or connection with, a personal deep relationship with. That's a big trust. So I just encourage everybody, take that trust very seriously, because we've now seen examples, chance wagers, MMA lock of the night, with all due respect, have violated the trust of the community, taken people's money with no intention to pay it back. And now they're trying to make good on it and do the right thing and all that, but it's a little bit of too little too late. So I would like to see it all made right as soon as possible, before there's any discussion of redemption, of coming back, of this, of that. Until every dollar is restored, there's no conversation about any of that, period. Point blank, nothing, nada, zero. Don't bring it around me, because it's fucking bullshit. And he stole from the nicest guys in the community. Fact. So I'm not buying it. That's my thoughts on the MMA lock of the night situation. If you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them in brief, but then your boy's got to get rocking and rolling on the rest of the day here and get back to work. So any other questions that you guys got, I truly appreciate that 45 people are still rocking with me live at 4 a.m. in the East. It's a blessing. And I hope that you guys have had a great time. I hope that you guys enjoyed the fight talk. I hope that you enjoyed, the real talk that we had to have here at the end as well. And, I want to just say as well, I think this is important. Shout out to Moyes. If you guys haven't seen it, go back. Moyes basically went through and documented hard evidence of the wrongdoing and made it all public. And a lot of people, again, weren't comfortable calling things what they are. I call it James Krause and the fight fixing scandal, because that's what the fuck it is. It's a scandal where people are involved in a fight that at best is questionable and at worst was an outright fix where they knew the outcome was a 0%. And I would lean much heavier towards the outcome was a 0%. So we'll have real talk about that. We'll have real talk about Locke being, unfortunately, for whether it's a long-term problem or a short-term problem. In this case, he was being a scumbag. He was taking other people's money. He was using it for his things. That's not right. You can't do that. That's all. It's really that simple. And if he makes it right now, God bless him. I'm a person that believes people can get better and do the right thing. But there's no conversation before every dollar is paid back. Guys, I think we've done it. 2 hours, 25 minutes. 2 public enemies are down. And on the other side, the good guys, we hope, will be up once again. Last year, good year on the show. Was very happy with the fact. Came to you guys almost every single week. If I missed, it was 1 or 2 weeks throughout the year. But almost every week here, providing free breakdowns, free content, trying to keep you guys up to speed with what I like. And if you want more from me, you want more information, all that stuff's in the description box below. But truly, I just appreciate the support. I appreciate you guys being here. If you could drop a like on your way out, I'd appreciate it very much. And anything that you guys want, drop in the comment section below, and I'll try and get to it before fight time. So thank you all so much for the time. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. And until next time, we'll see you on the other side. Come back next week. We'll have all the same fun again. Take care, guys.